Sword of Coming Chapter 9:12. The three people left this Wuxia city, and whistles suddenly burst from the top of the city. What's wrong with Ningyao? There is no second shopkeeper. At the Great Wall of Jianqi, who didn't know that outside of Ningfu, Ningyao still gave the second shopkeeper a lot of face. As for returning to Ningfu, whether the second shopkeeper would kneel on the washboard is a matter of our ass. On the way to Yufeng, Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Let's go to Fuxian Lake first." Today, Feishing City has two Xianxia ferry crossings, the summer ferry crossing in the northernmost summer city, and the foothills of Zifu Mountain, which is the site of Deng Liang's cultivating Taoism. There is a ferry crossing on Fuxian Lake named Mehundu, one north and south, just do business in two directions. Summer Palace, Summer City, Summer Ferry. The naming of saves worry and effort. Ning Yao sullenly said, "I didn't think of a particularly good name either." Qin Pingon nodded and said, "If there are too many good names, it's really not easy to choose." Ning Yao glanced at Xiao Imo. Xiao Imo immediately explained, "Madam, the reason why the sun did not go to Feishing City right away is because the sun is carrying the real name of the big demon, and is separated from the half of the city where Hadao is located, so he will be taken to Feishing City. The invisible Taoist rhyme in the realm is naturally repulsive, and even regarded as a potential hidden danger that is unpredictable for the enemy and ourselves. If the young man ventured into the City of Ascension, he would be mistaken for a questioning sword." Xiao Imo pressed his hat on his head and said, "Guilty." This matter is also blamed on Xiao Mo's background. Coming here with the sun is like having the sun's identity as a big monster. Ningyao was confused. Is it possible for an ascending realm to be like a monk who opens up and gives birth to a spiritual wisdom? Like the naive sword spirit of the fairy sword in the sword box behind her? It's just that she is an ascended realm monk. Why don't you know this? Qin Pingon then explained it. Just like the Liju cave of his hometown, he once gave birth to a golden incense little man, who was hidden in the locust wood sword box behind Qin Pingon, and finally handed it to the old man Yang. This kind of strange things, similar to the monk's Yuaning, was born with a lack of intelligence, ignorant and temperamental. It is difficult to distinguish between the enemy and the enemy. The land and water nurtures the other person, and the incense little man who ascends the city, of course, will only be more temperamental. Qin Pingon said, "Qin Ji should be the only person who noticed this. He deliberately didn't tell you about it, so he must have considered it himself." At the beginning, Qin Pingon was lucky. He always felt that even if Fei Xingcheng really had this opportunity, he would not be able to resuscitate so quickly in just over 10 years. He was more in a state of sleep. Besides, Qin Pingon I also carried the hidden official jade plaque with him, which can indicate his identity to a certain extent. But even if Qin Pingon took out the jade plaque that symbolizes his identity and hung it around his waist, it can't be said to be ineffective, but the effect is not great. As soon as he approached Feishing City, Qin Pingon seemed to be facing a martial arts master who had reached the realm, and he seemed to be talking to Qin Pingon. "Please stop, dare to get close, immediately ask for a punch." This means that if Qin Pingon rushes to Ascend City, it is equivalent to a questioning sword. With Xiao Imo by his side, entering Feishing City is of course not a problem, but Qin Pingon is willing to consume the slightest amount of Feishing City wisdom. That's why Qin Pingon planned to familiarize in the surrounding areas of Feishing City, and then go to Feishing City to find Ningyao, and he had to say hello outside the city, explain clearly, and then find a way to ensure that the illusion is not harmed. Qin Pingon will enter the Feishingcheng incense villain. Just from the perspective of a foreigner, you can choose 3 places to see if you can find some details to fill the gaps in Feishingcheng. Just now, Wuxia City of the Criminal Officer Line, the Summer City of the Hidden Official Line, and the Chuanfu Line. The Ecstasy Crossing will walk around. Ning Yao is stunned. No wonder she felt in her heart before and always felt that something was wrong. Then the Yujian lifted into the sky and patrolled the surrounding areas, so Xiao Mo's figure was soon discovered. Ning Yao asked softly, "Why didn't you say it earlier?" Knowing this, she would not show up directly at the gate of Wuxia City. Maybe it has disrupted many of his plans. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "When I re-enter the Yupu realm, my situation will be much better. If I enter the fairyland someday, there will be no problem when I come to Feishingcheng again." A nascent soul realm, it is difficult to really suppress the real names of those great monsters, especially in today's wild world. There are more ancient monks who are about the same age as Xiaomo. Among them are the real names of 3 great monsters who were sown back then. Ren Tianxin helped Qin Pingon sow his real name. Xiao Imo smiled and said, "In a few days, it will be the beginning of spring in the world of Hauran. It is also the time when the sun has just restored the nascent soul realm. Generally speaking, he should stay in the Xindu Mountain Dojo and continue to stabilize his realm. In the world, it is the young man who made a temporary intention and Xiao Imo couldn't stop it. For Qin Pingon, for Qin Pingon, for Qin Pingon, for Qin Pingon, the two things of praying for rain on the ancient monument of Buried River." Ning Yao glanced at Qin Pingon, so interlocking. "How about singing double reeds? Did you two practice before coming here?" Qin Pingon aggrieved, "Heaven and earth conscience." Ning Yao asked, "Is it a good thing? Are there any things that need extra attention, hidden drawbacks?" Qin Ping's palm with a boxing hand nodded and smiled. "Of course it's a good thing and it's still a great thing. There are no sequelae and there are no advantages that outweigh the disadvantages. We can't ask for the Mo Dao fate. In fact, being so repelled by Feishing City is naturally a tricky thing for Qin Pingon, but for the entire Feishing City, it is a very good thing. Because this means that Feishing City not only has truly integrated into the colorful world, it has even been recognized by this world's avenue, and has won the favor of a kind of world and earth. Different from Bai Yujing and Western Buddhism, only the monks stepped through the gate and entered the colorful world. The sword repairmen of Feishingcheng brought a whole city, forcibly cut through the long river of time, and the imperial sword soared to this point. Just say one thing and you know how rare this gift of heaven is. Once there is that Ascension Realm great monk who wants to sneak into this place secretly, it will trigger some kind of heaven and earth anomaly. Ning Yao, as long as he happened to be in the city at the time, he could immediately notice something was wrong. This kind of mysterious guarding formation is simply aimed at all the 14th Realm and Ascension Realm great monks. And no need to consume the slightest aura of the sky and earth in Feishingcheng, and no need for half a fairy money. When they arrived at Fuxian Lake, they fell into shape together. Qin Pingon squatted on the shore, holding water with one hand, condensed into a turquoise water ball, carefully inspecting the depth and flow of the water transport, and then twisting it with the other hand, holding a handful. The breath of heaven and earth, turbid and confused, like clouds and mist lingering around the fingertips. The most important thing about the construction of the Xianxia ferry is hydrogeography. Like the ordinary ferry of the Linshui dynasty, they all look for the deep water port to determine the depth of the ship's draft, because a series of Xianxia ferry, including their own Nujiadu Qin Pingon, was at least half an expert. Let go of his hands, looked up around. A ferry crossing without any traces of craftsmanship looked extremely rough. This is actually right. Determine the general direction, build the framework, and everything is pragmatic. It is enough that the ferry can be anchored and set sail. Today's Feishing City, in all aspects, is far from the point of excellence. It is something that will be considered after at least 100 years. A sword light cut through the night sky and fell to the foot of the mountain. Deng Liang held his fist high and said loudly, "I have seen a hidden official." Looking at the man in the green shirt, Deng Liang was in a good mood and this guy finally came back. There are some things, Deng Liang really wants to deal with the guy in front of him. Spit out bitter water. An ascending city, intricate relationships, several meetings of the Patriarch's Hall in recent years, only talking about the Summer Palace. It is not Ning Yao who is the temporary hermit official, and it is not easy to negotiate, but it is too easy to negotiate. It is nothing more than a matter of success or failure, and it is never procrastinated. Just getting used to the atmosphere of the Summer Palace in his early years, Deng Liang always felt that something was missing. As the number one person in the world, Ning Yao's realm is too high. On the road of spiritual practice, she rides the dust, making it hard for everyone to look forward to. It is like a towering tree with shades of the city. In fact, even Dong can't. They, deep in their hearts, would not really regard Ning Yao as a hermit with a pure identity. And some of Ning Yao's ideas, such as swordsmanship-like practice, like handing swords on the battlefield, are straightforward. In the former Summer Palace, from Qin Pingon to sorrowful Miao Jianxian, to Lin Junbai and Dong Wubu, all the hidden officials have the same line of sword repair, and they complement each other no matter how different their personalities and backgrounds are, whether they are local or foreign sword repairs. As long as it is one thing, it is often everyone who is put on the table to discuss it. Not only can it solve the immediate matter, but it can also solve the 3, 5, or even all related matters in the same context. Furthermore, Deng Liang has been away from his hometown for many years, and he also wants to know some recent conditions of Judu Mountain from the hermit. Qin Pingon handed his hand back and smiled. I have seen Chief Deng climb together on Zifu Mountain, which was once in ancient ruins, and came to the top of the mountain. Qin Pingon squatted in front of the stone stele. Deng Liang squatted aside and said openly, "Don't blame me for doing my own business for personal gain. I will grab this opportunity even if I grab it." Qin Pingon tweeted, "This is not the right thing to say. It's like a jar of wine that has betrayed the line of the hidden official and surrendered to the enemy criminal." Scolded, pointed the finger at the top of the criminal officer's line. "The Chisho of the Dog Day digging the wall and foot to our summer residence. It is wasteful of my mind to treat him as a good brother." Even if Deng Liang has heard it, Chisho has also suffered for 8 lifetimes. The guard met Qin Pingon that year, and then the two sides began to point their needles at the wheat mang. As a result, Chisho happened to be neighbors with Qin Pingon and Qing Quan when he was stationed in the city. There are so many old sword repairs in the Great Wall of Sword Qi. They are famous for being not afraid of the sky. Qing Quan must be one of them. Because he has fallen across the border, he has an old sword with a flying sword, solid solution, and the nickname Qi Shanglu. On the side of Xian Qi Tingji, Qing Quan has always spoken without restraint. Qin Pingon still looked at the inscription on the inscription. There are not many words but many meanings. Moreover, the first and the body of the monument are all knowledge which can help future generations to come to generation and identify the year. Before you plan to leave Feishing City, you must come here to build the monument and go back to Lu Jinglong to study and study. Anyway, there is everything within a short distance, and the work can be completed in a quarter of an hour. Qin Pingon handed over a jar of wine which was given by Aunt Feng. Deng Liang knew the goods and caught the wine jar. "Yes?" Qin Pingon nodded, "Guessed correctly." Deng Liang held the wine altar in his arms and did not hesitate to stretch out his hand again. "Give another altar, I will drink another altar and leave another altar. When you turn back you will help me to give it to the Judu Mountain Patriarch Hall. It is of great use." He knocked out Deng Liang's palm with his elbow, and Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Being the chief worshipper, the skin is different. Okay, I have reserved 2 jars of 100 flower stuff for you. When I travel to Iashao in the future, give it to Judu Mountain in your name." Deng Liang entered Feishingcheng in Jiachun 6 years later, almost a year later than Jing Dafeng. Deng Liang's meeting ceremony for Feishingcheng was not light. He brought a large amount of mountain materials unique to Judu Mountain, 60 altars of secret brewing Suidan wine, 300 pieces of ghost charms known as the Golden Book of Green Tendons, and 800 gene of Xianxia rice, named Zhongximi in Qin Pingan's view. If fermented rice and talisman are considered to be the icing on the cake, but those rice seeds are actually sending charcoal in the snow. Now in the Zifu mountain boundary and Wuxia city, began to grow the Xianxia rice widely. Many ideas coincide. The only problem is that the current Feishing city is dedicated to expansion. The Zhou Xian did not accept some of the suggestions of the chief worshipping Deng Liang, but could only temporarily shelve it, or did not pay enough attention to it. This is also normal. There are too many things that need to be done and things that can be done at hand. In fact, the 3 vain monks of Feishing City have done a good job. Declined Deng Liang's invitation and did not go to his mansion for a drink. Now Deng Liang also collects 2 disciples and a group of registered disciples. He is determined to establish the next sect for Judu Mountain. Yifeng left Zifu Mountain. On the way, Ning Yao spoke with Qin Pingon with his heartfelt voice. Qin Pingon immediately asked Xiao Mo to go to Feishing City first, and then sacrificed a caged bird. Ning Yao blushed, took off the golden robe on his body, took off the sword case and handed it to Qin Pingon. It was like a very special customs clearance document to help Qin Pingon enter Feishing City. Qin Pingon was just blindfolded, and Ning Yao had already put on a robe that was made by the clothes shop in the past. Ning Yao said, "Don't delay your practice." Qin Pingon smiled and put on a golden robe, holding a sword box in his arms. Ning Yao said, "I didn't joke with you. If this love lasts for a long time, how can it be in the dynasty? Especially for those on the mountain who hope to truly achieve long-term vision, decades of time are really not a big deal." Qin Pingon put away the caged bird, nodded and said, "Recently in Xindu Mountain, I have been more diligent in practice than ever before. It is almost the same as when I first started to learn Shanshan Quan." Ning Yao nodded and said, "When I get home I will retreat, but as long as something happens I will knock on the door and it will not delay my practice." This is very unique and very Ning Yao. Qin Pingon wondered. Why do you want to retreat again? It seems that since knowing Ning Yao she has only retreats twice. The last time was not long ago. Ning Yao was on the side of Dali capital and needed a solid ascent to the first level. Ning Yao glanced at him and stopped talking. Qin Pingon became more and more weird. What's wrong? Ning Yao said in his heart. I want to prepare for the 14th level. The road is there. About 2 or 3 thresholds need to be crossed. Qin Pingon wiped his face and remained silent. Xiaomo should really listen. After tens of thousands of years of cultivation, he has not been able to find the road of pure sword cultivation among the 14 realms. Xiaomo, are you ashamed and not ashamed? Ning Yao's mouth turned up and then quickly pressed down. I heard that someone used to be on the side of Tuyue Mountain, and said to the big demon culprit that if I were your age I would never see my sword. The speed of the two of them was not fast, so Xiaomo hid himself over the border of Feixingcheng, waiting for a long time. Compared with Qin Pingon, who bears the real name of the great demon, Feixingcheng's vigilance and hostility towards Xiaomo is not that great. This is actually related to the fact that Xiaomo's swordsmanship is too orthodox. After all, I really have to worry about it, not talking about the roots and feet of the Dao, only talking about the inheritance of the Dao. Xiaomo may be worthy of the brother of the elder sword Immortal Qin Qingdu. Ning Yao took the two of them down to the martial arts field at home and went to retreat on his own. Anyway, someone knew him well. Qin Pingon has already handed back the sword box to Ning Yao. Rao is a big ningfu. Looks more and more empty and quiet. 2 old people are missing and there is no dragon slashing cliff. Qin Pingan's house was cleaned up, and the bedding on the bed was neatly folded, without the slightest bit of decay. It should be because he would often take it out to bask in the sun. On the other side of the wing, on a table, there are still some plain chapters that were not able to be carved back then, piled up into a mountain, and there are several books, all of which are copied from the book and moved from the west to the west. If Yen Fatz's silk shop has a lot of business after a few months of work, it is estimated that one more book of 300 sword immortals will be published. At that time, Dong could not ask for a tripartite book seal for himself and his 2 boudoir friends, and the second shopkeeper who had been in the seal business. The other 2 women's sword repairs were Situ Longqiu and Guanmei. Dong didn't know how to be generous and directly gave Qin Ping a large piece of precious celestial material called Shuangjiang jade, which was heavy and weighed 7 or 8 catties, and it was a valuable treasure in the world. According to the agreement, the remaining leftovers, outside the 3-party seals, will be used as the second shopkeeper's wages. As a result, those leftovers were carved out by Qin Pingon with a very small seal of 12 squares. With the 15th flying sword as a carving knife, one party would seal a small summer coin. Among them there is a collection of book seals of Guandao Guandao Guandao, but it's still a mystery who will get it now. If they are living in the vast world, some people of insight with unique vision will follow the 100 Swords Immortal and Zhenxian imprints to according to the picture, and the inspection is correct and it is confirmed that it is the genuine product, just like the sandalwood palm of Pushun Yankatang. Li touched it. It is estimated that he would not frown as long as he could buy it for a small amount of rain. Qin Pingon twisted the wick with 2 fingers, instantly lit a lamp on the table, then sat at the table, spread out the booklet and asked with a smile, Xiaomo, come and take a look. If you have any seals you particularly want, I can send it. Xiaomo sat aside, took the booklet, flipped through the pages carefully, stopped and smiled. My son, just this sentence. Qin Pingon turned his head and glanced at the print on the upper page of the book. It was the phrase Qing Yi is like a box out of Tai A. Xiaomo has a good vision and is quite picky. Lifting his chin again, Qin Pingon took out a brand new carving knife from his sleeve. During his leisure time practicing in the Xiandushan Taoist temple, he personally crafted and refined a carving knife. Pick your own seal, this treatment is not common. Xiaomo got up, chose a piece of the tallest patch as if the peaks were the highest, and handed it to Qin Ping, and Qin Pingon rolled up his sleeves, rubbed his hands and breathed back into his old career. I don't know if he would be unfamiliar. He did a few stretches of his arms. Since it was given to Xiaomo, it's not a money-making business, so he has to do it. Dessert. When Qin Pingon was at his desk for seal cutting, there was only the sound of rustling in a house. When his son twisted his seal with his 2 fingers, he finished the engraving of several lines of temporarily compiled margins, raised it a little bit and gently blew the seal fragments. Xiaomo whispered softly, My son, in Wuxia City and Tuyue City for the time being. Nothing unusual. Qin Pingon just hummed slightly and continued to seal his head. Xiao Imo was on the side of Wukuei City. As soon as Ning Yao appeared, Qin Pingon asked him to travel far away with Yin Shen, and then rushed to Tuyue City with the body of Yang Shen to check the heartstring changes of the cultivators in the two cities. It's like an invisible rush. But at this moment Xiao Imo, who is sitting quietly at the table, knows that his son is not really willing to do this but has to do it. And this temporary trip to go out for a long trip, the son is actually not worried about this vigorous ascending city, but worried about Ning Yao. As for the reason, the son only said a weird metaphor but did not elaborate on the reason. I just say it's a very troublesome guessing, the kind of guessing where the answers to the puzzles are given. Is related to the disciple that Huang Ting, the crowned female champion of Taiping Mountain, collects in this world. In fact, in Ningfu at the moment, in addition to Ning Yao, there is also a foreigner who is not a native of Feixingcheng, but the remnants of Tongyi's Hao. To be precise, they are the descendants of those remnants who have taken refuge in the colorful world. Is a little girl who was born in a colorful world. So Wuxia Xianxia is now a few years old in Jiachuan. How old is she? Is the only disciple that Huang Ting collects here. The surname is Feng and the name is Yuanshao. It seems that because she was born on the Lantern Festival of the first year of Jiachuan, her father and mother gave such a name. Huang Ting didn't take it to Haoran at the time, so she gave it to Ning Yao to take care of her. The little girl was left at Feixingcheng Ningfu. Qin Pingon thought at first that she would be a little girl like Chai Wu, and she would have good monastic aptitude to be lawless. However, Ning Yao said that the young girl has a mediocre aptitude for cultivation, but she has a simple and honest temperament and is very pleasing. Generally speaking, Feng Yuanshao is unlikely to get involved in mountaineering if she does not meet Huang Ting, who has a deep blessing. But it was just that which made Qin Pingon feel uncomfortable. There are also several types of monastic geniuses. Ning Yao is a kind of extreme. The other kind is like Huang Ting of Tongyi's Hao, he Xiao Yang of the gods of the past, and the wish of Zhong Shenzhou, who has the nickname juvenile Jiang Taigong. Xiao Imo suddenly said, I didn't promise the son to go to Fiaozhou before. If the son is angry he will scold Xiao Imo a few words. It turned out that Qin Pingon had discussed with Xiao Imo and asked Xiao Imo if he could take a trip to the Fiaza mine to meet several Haoran sword immortals. Xiao Imo did not agree. Since he is the dead man of his own son, there is no reason to leave the Xindu mountain boundary. He must stay close and stay by his side. Once the son's practice had an accident, Xiao Imo would die hard to redeem. This is also Xiao Imo, who is very good at talking, and for the first time rejected Qin Ping's request. If you refuse this matter, I will certainly be a little depressed, but I will certainly not be angry. Under the lights, the son of my own son looked kind and gentle, shook his head lightly, smiled and said, Xiao Imo, believe me, everyone should have their own life. Probably a good life is that we can be responsible for our own life. Right. Xiao Imo smiled and said, the truth of the son is always right to think about. Qin Pingon shook his head and stopped speaking. When he finished engraving the seal, he took a deep breath, stretched his waist and asked with a smile, Xiao Imo, would you like to have a supper? I will cook it myself and taste mine. Craft? Xiao Imo smiled and nodded and said sincerely, I've been looking forward to it for a long time. Wait a moment. Qin Pingon stood up and went to the stove on the other side of the room. Take out the prepared ingredients, eggs, green peppers, green onions, garlic, etc. Roll up the sleeves, tie the apron, put the chopping board, arrange the dishes and separate them into categories. Xiao Imo was only in the stove before. Looking at the door of the room, I feel pleasing to the eye. Qin Pingon quickly fried 2 large bowls of fried rice with eggs, brought them to the table in the hall, sat opposite Xiao Imo and ate separately. Qin Pingon put down his chopsticks and saw that Xiao Imo was still chewing slowly so he could eat slowly. Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment and asked, Xiao Imo, did you ever meet in a wild world that made you feel special? Weird Daoist? Xiao Imo swallowed a bite of food and wondered, the sun, is it the barbaric world later, not the world under the old heaven? Qin Pingon nodded, it means the barren world later. Xiao Imo shook his head. Seriously injured that year, Xiao Imo left those caves in the wild world. Soon he went to Haotsai Mingyue and couldn't move. He never encountered any strangeness. The Taoist and things that Xiao Imo can call singular, and the ascended monks who are called by the later world venerable of course can't be counted. Is like the immortal way of, Taoist head don't be wooden hairpin. Didn't say anything about the wild new throne monster even inside the old throne, If Yangji hadn't been saved by Junyan, Xiaomo would have been hacked to death when he said that he was hacked to death. As for the cause of the conflict between the two sides, it is also very simple. It is just a few words that Xiaomo ridiculed Xiaomo. He felt that Xiaomo's swordsmanship was improper, not as pure as Qin Qingdu and Yuan Xiang. Yangji spoke to Xiaomo face to face, but it spread out accidentally and was heard by Xiaomo on the way, and there was that sword and chase after that. No way. Bai Zai spoke in person and had to go. Not going. Bai Zai is about to do it. In ancient times, a mountain Taoist from a demon clan, no matter how good his temper was, he couldn't get better. A few of Xiaomo were seriously injured at the time. What's more, even if they were not injured, they would definitely not be able to beat Master Bai, who never shot easily but fell apart with one shot. Otherwise, even the few fellow Daoists of the same age, including Xiaomo, would not be willing to fall asleep for a so-called healing. After all, that kind of retreat is a long hibernation that may not have a chance to wake up. Sleep and die in the true sense. Xiaomo asked cautiously, "My son, it's because of Fei Shencheng's rejection. What did you think of?" Qin Pingon said without any hidden temptation. He directly told Xiaomo what he was thinking. "I guess that there is some kind of greatest overwhelming victory in every world, so the three masters of the three teachings went out for a long trip this time. It is very possible that one of the most important things is to talk about it separately." Xiaomo smiled and said, "So the son is still worried about his wife. The so-called puzzle is the little girl named Feng Yuanshao? As for the three-teaching patriarch, what he thinks and what he does, Xiaomo doesn't really care. He is just an ascendant sword repairer and he hasn't reached the 14th stage yet, so he doesn't get mixed up." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "It's a precaution, but this kind of situation is not good or bad in a strict sense. Both sides are born and take advantage of the trend. To be precise, it is a relationship of mutual victory, not something. The relationship of non-enemy or friend and non-friend or enemy." Because in Gongdalan before, Mr. Qin Pingon heard a story from a very old age. Mr. said that when the most holy master traveled to study the world in his early years, he was passing by the river and met an old fisherman who ferried there. The two sides discussed the same. In the field they are all holding their own opinions and no one has been able to convince anyone. In short, the most sage master failed to cross the river by boat, and the fisherman went away alone. This seemingly small and old thing, there is no written record on the Confucian temple. In an allegory made up by Lu Qin, there was a description, as if the three masters of Bai Yujing witnessed it with his own eyes. We'll never deliberately talk about the old almanac with the closed disciples in front of Jing Shengxiping. At that time, Jing Shengxiping also had a weird face, which helped to verify what Qin Pingon had in mind. Like the barren world, Qin Pingon guessed that Firen, this fellow, is most likely the existence of the ancestor who defeated the barbarians. But it is not ruled out that there is also an older and more hidden existence hidden, and now it has become a savage co-owner, only to win against each other. If it is the latter, then this savage man of Taoism is a bit younger than the savage ancestor Bai Zai and Xiaomo. Because of this existence, the real Taoist age will only happen to be the same age as the wild world, and will definitely live the same life as the entire world. This monk who truly belongs to the birth and nurturing of heaven and earth, will live the same life as heaven and earth, be born in the same month and same day in the same year, and die in the same month and same day in the same year. And this Taoist who can almost be regarded as the place of the world's luck, and the first person in the world to cultivate the Tao, the relationship between the two parties will become very complicated and very delicate. If the roads of both sides diverge, it is an extremely dangerous road dispute. If the roads of the two sides meet, you can become a veritable friend of the roads. Xiaomo said, "If you stay in a wild world, no matter whether you can determine the identity of this little girl, she must be dead by now. To be precise, life is better than death. She will be tightly detained by some secret method. After stripping off the 3 souls and 7 souls, there is at most 1 soul and 1 soul left. Let it be reincarnated so as not to be too late to be counterattacked by a great road of the world. The rest will definitely be imprisoned in the world and the end will be like that one. The first ancestor of the military strategists common / Qin Pingon said, "Then see you at the top of the mountain." Xiaomo smiled and said, "I'm so lucky to meet the son and the wife." After Qin Pingon walked out of the house alone, strolling in the courtyard, starry sky full of stars. Qin Ping and unknowingly walked to the door of the mansion and sat in the small concierge. Impermanence of life. Ping zone gathered and scattered. Nothing happened overnight. At dawn, an old golden pill came on the street outside the door. It was unexpectedly happy to see that the second shopkeeper was inside the concierge. There was no need to knock on the door and he was immediately happy. Second shopkeeper, I don't want to be the accountant and be the concierge. What about the penalty? What's the matter? You'll be treated as soon as I get back to the Jianqi Great Wall. Do you want me to talk to Ning Yao? Damage the majesty of the hidden officer. The second shopkeeper often drank at his own wine shop and was shut outside. There was an old sword who said that the second shopkeeper was pitiful, and when he came home at night he should not knock on the door and dare not be hard. Chuang didn't even have the courage to sneak over the wall, so he could only lie down on the steps at the door and deal with it for one night. The second shopkeeper walked out of the concierge and leaned against the door with a smile on his face. Seeing that the opportunity was not good, the old monk threw a pot of wine at the same time as he trot up the steps, but was slapped back by the second shopkeeper. Lao Song, what do you drink early in the morning? Didn't Mrs. Bamboo hold enough? Well, it's a real second shopkeeper, so I can't fake it. Ordinary people can't tell the taste. The shopkeeper also speaks coquettishly, but it is not the same as the second shopkeeper. Sitting on the steps outside together, this old Song, of course, was one of the wine holders in his early years. It's an old golden pill from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. He used to be a monk from Danfeng. He will also help record the military exploits. Good wine, good gambling. Wine is really bad. If you drink too much, you will tear your nose in tears. The gambling luck is worse if the gambling is worse, and every gambling must be lost. To say that it is the old golden core in fact does not mean how old he is. Before the formation of the core, he was also a sword repairer with quite good aptitude. When the old Song was still young, even if he was not a first-class genius, he was considered to be of his generation. The Junyan inside on the wine table always said that he had a good skin when he was a teenager, and Wu Qingpei and me would like to bow down. Many aging Yuanying realm sword repairmen drinking in the liquor store also like to call him Lao Song. My lord, how long do you plan to stay? Lack of money again. I'm talking about feelings, what about the money? Old Song, you are a golden pill anyway, so you didn't go to the criminal officer's line to get a messenger? I didn't go, I don't want to go to the Patriarch Hall of Feishing City. I don't have the face to sit there. You don't want to take the Summer Palace. I want to go. There's no way. The high is not the low. Just mix it up. You know. Yes, I, the son-in-law who walked out of a big portal like Chisho, didn't look pleasing to the eye. Xianxia was not less likely to be drunk by me in those days. I fished for a somewhat oily work in Laolin City. At least you don't need to look at the person's face. It's a pity that if you have some spare money you will give it all to your wine shop. At the beginning of each month, you will have 2 pots of Qingshan wine. In the middle of the month you will drink Zhuhai Dongtian wine, and at the end of the month you will drink the Dumb Lake wine. 1 month has passed. The current bunch of little bastards, as long as they are sword repairers, they don't even talk about whether they are sword fairy embryos. They are not high in realm and their eyes are on their foreheads. They see me, Lao Song. I don't even know about an appointment. The kid who used to wear open crotch trousers, I saw you on the road, not a Lao Song. It's not the same, I can't tell you how it's different, it's just a feeling. Speaking of this, Lao Song couldn't help but drank a sullen wine. Second shopkeeper, isn't it too good? It's a good thing now, but I'm not sure whether it's good in the future. Then you are in charge. Some things you can only take one step and look one step at a time, otherwise it will end up with a what if, a mess full of resentment. Second shopkeeper, don't talk to me about these vain heads and finally come back, can't you? What do you mean by that sentence? Let's sit on the sidelines? No, it's not so literary. It's the native dialect from my hometown, standing on the shore watching the big water. That's right, that's the sentence. But it's easier to speak in your dialect. Run here early in the morning to block the door. Won't you be a bachelor just to show me that you are a bachelor? Isn't this a second shopkeeper? Lao Song, in the future you and Feng Qi and then go to the wine shop to drink. You can make an exception, I will say hello to Jing Dafeng, but you guys remember not to publicize, otherwise the shop will not want to open the door to do business in the future up. This is good to dare to love. What do you want, just on credit, not for not giving money? I understand, I understand. You know what a fart you owe you in the middle of the month and you pay back at the beginning of the month. As long as you can pay on credit, let alone know a fart, you don't know what a fart. Is this a matter of money? It's a matter of face, it's the only one. Second shopkeeper, it's better to make a discussion. Those of my friends don't take credit. They have money now, so I can pay on credit alone. How about? Some of their acting skills are not good and they almost show off their stuff several times. It's not a day or two for being scolded for a drink. Unlike me, few know about it. Our relationship. Lao Song, you have been bachelor all these years and you have been scolded by friends as worse than dogs. It's not without reason. Not as good as the second shopkeeper, not surprising, I agree. Second shopkeeper, I won't return the scolding anymore. Don't be like that, I'm so embarrassed. Lao Song's real name, probably except for his old friends, many young people in Feixiangcheng don't know it now. After listening to it, they become accustomed to it. In fact, the name is very good, Song Yue. In the previous Howren world, the life and death of Jianxiu of the Great Wall of Sword Qi did not matter at all. Today's awe-inspiring world, I always feel that the sword repairs of the Great Wall of Sword Qi are all extremely powerful and have countless battles. Not like this. In the history of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, there have been many sword repairs like Song Yue. It is hard to be really happy after drinking and it is not easy to win money. The problem lies in the flying swords of their sword repairs. For example, Song Yue actually owns 2 natal flying swords and he is also a golden pill sword repairer. In theory, it is not bad at the Great Wall of Sword Qi. One is called Dragon Vessel, and the other is called Gold-Plated. The former can the latter. But he can only repair some troubled swords on the battlefield, just like adding a life-saving robe of magic treasure rank out of thin air. So after Song Yue entered the Middle 5 realm and before he became the Golden Core, it was only because of the gilded flying sword that fell twice in this life, and he had no hope of becoming a primordial infant in this life. A sword repairman like Song Yue is considered good. After all, he has been to the battlefield outside the city to fight. The natal flying sword of that sword repairer is named Weaver Girl, and he has stayed in the clothes shop for almost his entire life, only when he was young. Vintage 2. Fijian's natal magical powers are only related to tempering, so they can only be nestled in the sword workshop, living in a simple place and almost no friends. There are also some sword repairs, Fijian's magical powers, which are just like a joke, making people laugh and cry. Even if they go to the battlefield, they are like a sword repairer without a flying sword, but they can only use the sword. Fang Changjian meets the enemy and kills the demon. Just talk about the 9 children Qin Pingon brought home. If the Great Wall of Sword Qi fights for decades, Bai Xian will be like many predecessors of sword repair in history. Once they reach the middle 5 level, they will become only one fight sword repair. Even if Yao Xiaoyan has 3 natal flying swords on the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, apart from the family worship sword master, it is almost impossible to specially provide her with a guardian, because it is completely unnecessary. And the old Yuan Ying who could write poems inexplicably in the wine shop back then had a natal flying sword named Door God. There was no sharpness at all. If it was sacrificed on the battlefield, the sword light would be extremely slow, and he would be laughed at as an ant moving. So it can only be used to warm up the golden core primordial spirit, and often help other sword repairers to protect the way during retreat. Therefore, there is the saying of Nana infant in the city and golden pill outside the city. Are they Jianxiu? Of course both. But does the sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi recognize it? Some people may also recognize it and some may not. If the relationship between the 2 parties is not good, just say casually, have you been to the battlefield and how much has been achieved in the battle? How do people answer? The drunkards of the Great Wall of Sword Qi may not really like to drink, just don't drink and do what they can do. Lao Jianxiu, you did not notice that the second shopkeeper seemed to be in a bad mood, so he patted Qin Pingon on the shoulder and comforted, second shopkeeper, don't get sulking. It's not a bachelor's thing that is better than a bachelor's thing. Just get used to it. Immortal. You don't know Song's character. He is notoriously strict and doesn't talk about it everywhere. Qin Pingon cursed, I'm sad for your 2 tattered flying swords. Alas, I'm still anxious. Sure enough, scholars like to turn their faces and deny people. Old Jianxiu laughed heartily. Drinking wine from the second shopkeeper, being scolded by the second shopkeeper, and watching the punches of the second shopkeeper are all excellent. The young hidden official has not been in Feixiang City for so many years. Whether he likes or dislikes the second treasurer, both sides are lonely. Is a letter from Feijin received after the winter of this year when Xiaoxua, Lu Jiqing invited Lu Jinglong to ask Jianqiong Linzong together. The two parties made an appointment to meet in the territory of Kaiyonglinzong's subordinate sect. However, after Lu Jinglong left Pianran Peak, he left his disciple Baishou and went with his sword alone, so that Baishou could arrive at the ferry at the agreed time. So 3 days earlier than Baishou and Lu Jiqing, he quietly arrived at the ferry under the Molong sect. Lu Jinglong changed into a Taoist robe and stayed at a ferry house and called Luozhai. The night was heavy, and in the heavy rain, Lu Jinglong held an umbrella and took a thin young boy to show him the blindfold method. He held the umbrella with one hand and gently pressed the boy's arm with the other, and walked back to the inn together. The inn checked the identity of the young man's landscape genealogy, and after it was recorded, a new room was opened for the direct disciple of the wandering Taoist. Lu Jinglong gave the boy 2 ointments and pills in porcelain bottles, one for external application and one for internal use. I carefully explained how to take the medicine twice. When the boy said that he had remembered it, Lu Jinglong let the boy rest assured and healed himself. Next door. The young boy who had passed away trembled. Dare to ask the immortal master? Lu Jinglong smiled and said, Taihui Jianzong Lu Jinglong. Just as the thunder broke out outside the window, the tortured young man in the prison in the Molong school was shocked, his face full of disbelief, muttering to himself and repeatedly chanting Taihui Jianzong sect master Lu Jianxian. Lu Jinglong bent down and picked up the oil paper umbrella leaning against the corner. Before leaving the house he asked, Yenting, would you hate those genealogists? The young man looked sad and pressed his lips tightly, wanting to nod, not daring, wanting to shake his head but not willing. Lu Jinglong said, repaying grievances with virtue. Why do you repay virtue? If you don't hate, they're a ghost. It's just a matter of revenge. Don't worry. In the lifeless eyes of the young man named Ran Ting, he finally recovered a little brilliance. He raised his head and looked at the great sword fairy who was different from his imagination. He boldly asked, is it really possible to take revenge? Lu Jinglong smiled and said, we must take revenge. Before Lu Jinglong closed the door gently, he smiled and explained, Yenting, you will be able to see Du Yu soon. Santing suddenly realized but soon felt weird again and cautiously asked, Sect Master Lu, brother Du is friends to you? Lu Jinglong shook his head and said, I didn't know Du Yu before, but Du Yu has a friend who is my friend. I believe I will become friends with Du Yu. The teenager next door slept shallowly and was awakened twice by lightning and thunder. After sitting up, Yenting was sweating and his face was pale. Looking around, he was a little dazed, as if he was not sure if he was dreaming. How could Big Brother Du know someone like Lu Dajiangxian on the horizon, and how could Sect Master Lu personally rescue himself from the Molong sect? Lu Jinglong, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, just glanced out the window. So soon the rain stopped and there was no more thunder in the sky. After, the big disciple Baishou almost entered the inn with Lu Jiqing's back and forth. Of course they all used pseudonyms and blindfolds. Taihui Jianzong, the contemporary Lord Lu Jinglong, and the white head of Pianranfing Peak. Golden Crow Palace Lu Jiqing, Dukhui Jianhu Rongchong Sui Jingqing Qinli Gao Yuqing. Du Yu, the soldier monk of the Ghost Axe Palace, and the strange boy named Yenting. Lu Jinglong smiled and took the initiative to introduce himself to Du Yu. Hello, my name is Lu Jinglong. Like Lu Jianxian and Rong Jianxian, I am a friend of Qin Pingan. Du Yu swallowed and didn't know what to say except to thank him. After seeing the safe and sound young man, Baishou still had some means to admire the master. Look, when the surnamed Lu came out, everything was gone, but Baishou said in a low voice, Liu's surname, are you too careless about what you do? Even if you are the first to go and save people, it is really good, but you stay in the eyelids of the Molong school? The Jianghu romance novel says the most dangerous thing. The place is the safest place. Do you really believe it? If you want me to say, your surname Lu is not as thorough as my brother Qin. Lu Jinglong just recounted the old with Lu Jiqing and Rong Chong, and ignored this unobtrusive big disciple. He had the ability to continue chatting like this when he arrived at Xindu Mountain. The depressed teenager saw Du Yu, his eyes reddened, choked up and shouted, Big Brother Du, I met by chance at that time, and Yenting only felt that the other party had a bold personality, funny speech, and met at first sight. Brother Du likes to call himself a good person. It was after the catastrophe that the young man knew his name was Du Yu, a monk of the Ghost Axe Palace genealogy. The boy had always thought that Big Brother Du was just a mountain and wild repair who likes to walk the rivers and lakes. He didn't have a lot of money in his pocket and he couldn't mix in the mountains. Daoist stretched out his hand to grab the boy's arm, smiled and trembled. It's fine if you don't die, it's fine if you are fine. I don't know why, seeing the sect Master Lu, it's just like staying with Senior Chen back then. Even if you go to the sword and the sea, even if you are in the tiger's lair in Longtan, it seems that you can still do your own way. Daoist lightly patted the boy's shoulder again, grinning with pain. Daoist hid the guilt in his eyes and said with a big grin, "Those with small arms and legs just can't withstand the wind and rain. Put me on it. You must be alive and kicking." After that, Lu Jinglong explained the reason with everyone and put it succinctly, except that in a prison of the Molong faction he successfully found this young man named Yen Ting, rescued it and used a piece of his own workout. The secret talisman was made by Tao on behalf of Li Zheng, so the Molong sect has not yet noticed something wrong, otherwise it would have broken out. For Lu Jinglong, the so-called high security and numerous restrictions on mountains and rivers, in fact, are 3 illusory mountain and river obstacles, plus the guard of a Yuanying monk. Naturally, it is like entering no one's land. As for the old Yuanying, of course he is Fan Qiao's protector. He is the second guest of the Qianglin zone. This small business of the Molong sect will not allow an old Yuanying to waste time here. The two sides passed by, looking at each other's appearance. He was still an old on the mountain who was very particular about cleanliness. When he was drinking with Hong Yitui, he complained endlessly with 2 female monks of the Molong faction. And the double talisman Lu Jinglong left behind is certainly not an ordinary puppet talisman. Otherwise the old Yuanying is not a fool after all, and will inspect the cage every day, and he has long seen the footwork. Lu Jinglong smiled and said, "After I brought the vines out, I went to see Fan Qiao twice. It was more surprising. It was a golden pill who deliberately concealed his sword skills. However, it didn't take long to build the pill. I guess the original intention of this trip was relax." Fan Qiao is the descendant of Qianglin ancestor Shitang, the proud disciple of Master Zhanglu. He is not yet Jiazi years old. He is an extremely young golden core earth immortal. He is rumored to be proficient in the talisman formation and refine the 5 elements of his life. Therefore it is a talisman monk with unlimited prospects. Rong Chong joked, "It's still a sword repairer? This is not like Cheong Linzong's style." It seems that Cheong Linzong has high hopes for this person so that he can hide and tangle like this. Is it to prevent people from being asked about the sword? Lu Jiqing breathed a sigh of relief, just like he was at the Golden Crow Palace, and he had told Du Yuming early about the life of the boy. Before I saw it, no one could tell. After all, Du was the first to find himself. Lu Jiqing and Lu Jinglong thanked him slightly and then began to pull out his sleeves. What did he do? He must be looking for wine. Lu Jinglong hurriedly reached out and held Lu Jiqing's arm, smiled and said, "Even if I don't make a move, you will be in time because..." Lu Jinglong stopped speaking, turned his head and asked the boy, "Can you say it?" The young man smiled brightly. Mr. Lu said casually, "It's not something to hide." Kantang still thinks it is better to call sect Master Lu as Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu is very knowledgeable. During these 2 days, there is almost nothing that Mr. Lu doesn't know about. Lu Jinglong went on to say, Lanting was born in Yanxi. In history there have been many vines since ancient times. It is most suitable for paper making. It was used as official paper for the official documents of several countries around it. It is durable and will not be wormed for 100 years, especially the kind. The golden version of paper is used by immortals on the mountain to write letters. But 200 years ago the water level of Yanxi was suddenly shallow and almost dried up, and the ancient vines on both sides of the bank gradually withered. Due to the exhaustion of raw materials, the paper was extinct for many years. The local immortal master was limited by his realm and couldn't find out the reason, so he lost this source of wealth. In fact, this is because Yenting gained a part of the world and was invisible, sheltered by the local air transport. Therefore, during the refining period the mountains and rivers were clean. Similar to the monk's retreat, the mountain is naturally closed so as not to attract covetousness. When the vines are successfully refined, the land will naturally restore the original landscape, and the ancient vines will become more luxuriant compared to the past. This is a kind of avenue feeding. The vines are simple in temperament and do not want to leave immediately. The heart is good. In the end, the monks of the Molong faction were eyeing them because they found that cutting the vine to make paper, if you add a few flavors of immortal woods and plants, the paper texture is excellent, Maybe it can be sold in Zhou Xian. So the vine was taken by the Mulong Pai Pai, regarded it as a money-making tree and used it to claim credit for Fan Xiao. This is why Yen Ting had such a catastrophe and why Fan Xiao was bound to win. And at the same time he did not hesitate to spend a lot of time. He secretly left the life of Yen Ting, that is waiting for Yen Ting to lower his head and be soft. Only because Yen Ting was in jail he made Na Fan Xiao swear that he would spare Du in Ghost Axe Palace before he was willing to return to Yen River. Fan Xiao felt that this was too embarrassing and even unwilling. Just pretend to swear an oath to deceive Yen Ting, thinking that as long as you catch Du, you will be able to get it right once and for all. I couldn't help but Yen Ting's non-cooperation. At the Ghost Axe Palace, I have let a sword repair of our Taihui sword sect wait. Just wait for Brother Kaiyong Linzong to go to the teacher to inquire about the crime. Lu Jinglong said in a very detailed manner. But no one thinks that Sovereign Lu said it too much. Qin Li silently remembered the Qianglin genealogy monk named Fan Xiao. The half-hundred-year-old golden core swordsman was very genius. After all, it was about 30 years later than himself for the formation of alchemy. Good people often have no reason to do good things, but smart people do bad things with a clear purpose and a clear context. Qin Li looked at the boy and chuckled softly. Yenting, according to the local county chronicles on your side, I heard that there is a long-lost Bing Bing paper in the paper, which has a better material than the gold plate. Can I order 100 rice paper with you? The young man looked shy and said, as much as you want. Gao Yuqing asked in a low voice. Qin Li, how do you know this? Qin Li squinted his eyes. What do you think? Gao Yuqing smiled. It was because he asked a silly question. Qin Li cannot be blamed for being impatient. In addition to practicing, Qin Li has been in Fuping Jianhu over the past few years, not to mention the archives of the sect, but also specially asked the seniors and sisters to help collect and gather the Shanshui Dibao and the official history archives of the Luzhou and Beiju, and local counties. After practicing sword I read a book. Qin and Li didn't feel boring either, and he lived as an old man in cultivating. More than 20 sword fairy embryos who stayed in Howren world to practice. Xie Songhua, who is the best apprentice in the world for our 2 apprentices, has to admit one thing. If you really want to talk about aptitude, talent, temperament, chance and put it together, even if Qin Li is in the Great Wall of Jianqi, Qishou and Pang Yuanji afterwards, among the youngest generation of sword repairers at the Great Wall of Jianqi, they also deserved the word leadership. So Qin Li didn't stay in the Great Wall of Jianqi and never followed Feishing City to a new world. For today's Feishing City, it is no small regret. Even today they are often mentioned by old people and their words are full of melancholy. Otherwise, Qin Li will definitely have a place in the Patriarch Hall of Feishing Cheng. It's just that Qin and Li followed Li Kai to the Beiju Luzhou, which is not bad. The saber is obscure, once the relic of the owner of a private house of the Sword Fairy, and the previous owner happened to be a loose repair sword fairy from Luzhou and Beiju. As for Qin Li's real name Feijin Liao Mei, it is magical and mysterious, and the Summer Palace commented it as Yi Shang rank. It is said that this is because the Hermit Master deliberately lowered the rank. It's a pity that I didn't go to the summer residence and was fascinated by the young hermit. Otherwise, Qin Li's Little Hermit nickname would have been changed to a veritable name. Rong Chong asked, then we will leave for Kaiyong Linzong? Qin Li said, Brother Rong, we will stay for a day or 2 and then leave later, otherwise we are too crowded and too conspicuous. Anyway, Kaiyong Linzong's Patriarch Hall will not run long. Gu is almost numb. Fuck it. Good seniors, how do you know so many mountain friends? Because he was close to the fairy, he realized that this gentle and cheerful senior brother Rong turned out to be a great disciple of Li Kai Jianxian in Dukping Jianhu. Probably I am the least promising one among the friends Chen Jianxian knows? Don't need to be general, it must be. Two-sleeved breeze Kaiyong Linzong, the world is invincible. The Qianglin school of Luzhou in Beiju is famous for the world, and it is also known as the sect with the head of the sect, the most frequently asked swords. In history there were no less than 100 questions about swords. But many so-called questioning swords, that is, a sword light was lit up from afar and they smashed on the Kaiyonglinzong's landscape formation. Only 9 times hit the Ancestor Hall, of which 3 times, the Ancestor Hall was really broken, and there was the sword fairy Jiue of the Yuanqi mountain in the past. Qianglin has always stood firm. It's no wonder Lu Yu, the lord of the Qianglin sect, has the confidence in the sword repair of one continent to say that I want to fight one continent one by one. The sword fairy is floating cloud to me. As for whether Lu Ying said it himself or someone did it to help sect master Lu speak his heart, does it matter? Unimportant. Anyway, it is rumored that even our highly respected real fire dragon who walked on the Baiquan mountain in the early years, had to nod his beard and sincerely praised him as so strong. Qiong Linzong is rich. / wealthy is really rich. Just to say that there are often monks enacting life and death conditions in the mountain, and there is a Baiquan mountain near the water in the first month. It is most suitable for monks to watch the battle. It is as big as a small country mountain. Qiong not only bought the entire mountain but also there. More than 1,000 Xianjiadong mansions were opened, renting but not selling, a bit similar to Yuguazong's Cloud Cave blessed land, with billowing wealth, fine water flowing and a pen of immortal money, all fell into Qiong pocket. Pens of immortal money are inconspicuous, but they can be accumulated together to be extremely impressive, and the more long-term rent the more expensive the price. Basically, there will be 1 or 2 private houses on the Baiquan mountain for the famous martial arts and monks in Luzhou and Beiju. Many Yamazawa Noxu even more so. Regardless of the name and no need to report the origin and roots with Qiong Linzong, just a pseudonym and a bag of enough fairy money, you can get 2 jade medals for climbing and opening the door. Qiong Linzong is stationed as a monk, who only recognizes jade tiles but not people. In addition to the mirror flowers over there, it has been in business for thousands of years, making 100 spring mountains, the aura of the heavens and the earth, and the strong protection of the mountains can already be compared to the 5 mountains of a continent. In addition, I was worried that being asked about the sword would cut off the way to make money. Some of the best feng shui treasures that occupies the best land and are most suitable for cultivation were given to some old immortal masters free of charge by the Qiong sect. Therefore there will be several old immortal masters sitting on the mountain all year round. At the mansion they only need to help block those questioning swords without warning during the cultivation period, which may be 10 years at most 20 years. Qiong Zong Lulu refers to Xianfeng Yuanling Temple Erlang Temple Yuanyang. These 3 jade realms in Luzhou North Ju can play a fairy from Middle-earth God continent at will. This is something recognized by one continent. It is said that Jiang Shangzhen first proposed it and it spread all over Beiju Luzhou at once, and Jiang Go Thief is rare to say something. Lu Jinglong said, "As for the sword, you don't need too many people, but the quality is clean, the sword is fair and enough. You guys just stay at the bronze crossing of Qiong Linzong and don't have to follow us to climb the mountain." The white head rolled his eyes and said, "If you dislike our low realm, just say it straight." Lu Jiqing had already started drinking with Rong Chong. Lu Jinglong turned a blind eye to him. Maybe he couldn't look down on the amount of drinks of the two. Lu sect master's drinking volume is so bottomless, not to mention the current Beiju Luzhou, which is on the side of the Great Wall of Jianqi. No one knows who does not know. In this matter, the Golden Crow Palace Lu Jiqing, the Duckweed Sword Lake Li Kai, the old Pif Wang Fulu, and the earliest Su Xingjiu from Yunchengcheng, everyone has a share and has a credit. As for the culprit, he is now busy preparing for the establishment of the next sect in Tongyi's Hao. Qinli hesitated. Lu Jinglong smiled and asked, "Qinli, what are your suggestions?" Qinli smiled shyly, "Then I will just say a few words." Qinli waved his sleeves, the water mist was hazy, and finally there appeared a geomancy map of the Qiongling ancestral boundary, pointing to the halfway point of Zushan Mountain. "Sect Master Lu, I just have a guess, this Qiongling ancestral mountain is half of it. The spring on the mountainside rises up from the pavilion. I think it is a maze. The white snake path adjacent to the Patriarch's Hall is also a landscape formation. Therefore, the sword repairmen from other towns in the past and the swordsmen seem to have broken the mountain and water prohibition. Even if the sword light successfully landed on the Patriarch Hall, and eventually a sword smashed the Patriarch Hall, it was all in vain. Qiong Linzong has only come to the paper-pappled landscape formation, the Patriarch Hall with flowing water. Often within 2 months, Qiong Linzong will be able to rebuild a brand new Patriarch Hall. In my opinion, it is not an outside rumor. Qiong Linzong is rich in wealth and he is only familiar with it. Of course, Qiong Linzong certainly does not lack the money. It can be possible, but this kind of activity is not in line with the personality of the Qiong Linzong monk, so it is very likely that the Patriarch in the eyes of outsiders Tang is just a clever way of blindfolding. The real body is a snail shell dojo, so what the sword light shatters is just an empty shell. So Sect Master Lu, if you just want to save face in this question of swords, it's a big deal, just like the previous sword repairs, standing near the top of the mountain and handing out a few swords to the Qianglin Zongzu mountain from a distance. It is also considered to have made Qianglin face disgraced. But if you want to ask the sword to be practical, not only do you have to climb the mountain past the Quanyong Pavilion, but also be careful of the mountains and rivers and then walk on the white snake path. The same is true. Like my master said, sneaking into the vicinity of the Patriarch's Hall and trying to be unconscious of it is actually very difficult. Lu Jinglong smiled and nodded. He is indeed a hidden official of the Great Wall of Jianqi. Was scored 7 or 8 points by Qin Li. It's hard to draw these conclusions based on a geomancy map pieced together everywhere. Look at the big disciple who was busy drinking secretly. Lu Jinglong was a little helpless. He liked drinking so much. When he arrived at Xindu Mountain, he would have a good drink with someone. Gao Yuqing listened attentively. Although Qin Li has never had a good face on her side, but the habit is just fine. Master said Qin Li is a cold-hearted face. Du was greatly admired when he heard it. This little sword fairy, looking at his young age, is very sophisticated in Jianghu experience. Qin Li asked tentatively, Sect Master Lu, can I secretly ask Fan Qiao on the sword without my registration number? Lu Jinglong nodded and said, after you and Fan Qiao Wenjian, I can let this news not reach Qianglin in the near future. In somebody's words, you can ask the sword if you don't ask. Qin Li immediately understood and smiled and said, my generation of sword repairers, ask first before talking. Lu Jinglong reminded, the premise is that you can run after the fight, and it's best to try to avoid showing signs. By the way, don't kill, there will be opportunities in the future. Qin Li Shin said, understood. Lu Jinglong suddenly smiled and asked, Qin Li, if I remember correctly, this is your first time in Howren World to ask the sword. Wouldn't you feel awkward to choose to ask the sword with Fan Qiao? Qin Li shook his head and said, what's so awkward about this? As long as I'm not above the opponent's realm, I don't want to ask who the sword is. We hidden officials can all wear women's dresses and go to the battlefield to fight. They are graceful, gorgeous, and squeaky without feeling the slightest awkwardness. When he thought of this kind of thing, Qin Li only felt that the hidden officer was really a high mountain. It would be hard to reach in this life. I just hope that I can vaguely see the back of the hidden officer in the green shirt while climbing. Qin Li suddenly closed his eyes and sacrificed his flying sword, but only swam to a nearby Benminkyo acupoint, and Qin Li's mustard seed was immersed in it. After a while, Qin Li opened his eyes and finished asking the sword. Natal flying sword, Mei, when you wake up it is when you sleep it is sleepy. Qin Li didn't make a ruthless move, but just poked a few small holes in that Fan Qiao. Because his refinement of this natal flying sword is far from being a great achievement. The following night Fan Qiao suffered another questioning sword. Is all dazzled and there is a sword repairman with a face and an uncertain body. He appears in front of him without warning, and then pokes him a few more swords. Fan Qiao has no power to fight back. And the guardian of the old Yuanying, he couldn't even see the sword repairman. Not to mention Fan Qiao, even the old Yuanying was scared to death. Which sword fairy of the upper fifth realm who didn't deal with Qianglin was so embarrassed that he was so lingering and entangled with a golden core junior. As for the two sending flying swords sent from Mulong sect to Qianglin, they all quietly ran into Lu Jinglong's sleeve, and they will be sent to Qianglin mountain a little later. After a group of people set off to Qianglin, Qin Li and the others stayed at Tongqian Ferry. Lu Jinglong and 3 people go to Qianglin mountain. Those who travel outside the country need to stop at the Quanyong Pavilion halfway up the mountain. But in fact climbing is learning. Because Lu Jiqing and Rong Chong were surprised to find that in the hazy landscape of the blurred vision, there seemed to be 3 more people walking on the road beside them, and the 3 of them went further and further away from self. What a Qianglin, he almost smashed 2 ancestral mountains that were extremely close to reality and illusion. In the true ancestral mountain climbing divine way, Lu Jinglong took the lead to open the way with a talisman in his hand, and every step is a symbol. Lu Jiqing and Rong Chong are like walking in a talisman formation. Lu Jinglong just stopped for a moment in the Yongquan Pavilion and the White Snake Trail, and soon continued to walk with the 2 behind him. The group soon came outside the Patriarch's Hall. Rong Chong couldn't help but ask in his heart, is this here? Lu Jinglong smiled and said, it's okay to not have a heartfelt voice, brother Qianglin can't hear it. Lu Jiqing asked a digression. Lu Jinglong, you tell me the truth, you are facing an enemy other than Xianxia. How many swords do you need to hand out? As a result, Lu Jinglong smiled and said, it's hard to say, and I haven't beaten an immortal. Lu Jiqing choked for a while. Lu Jinglong said, this time I ask the sword, it is not advisable to go too far because Qin Pingon will definitely visit Kaiyong Glinzong next time he travels to Luzhou in Beiju. He has a personal matter to talk about. So we finish this patriarch hall. Just retreat and stop questioning the sword with brother Kaiyong Glinzong. Lu Ji smiled and said, it's just such a patriarch hall, let us chop in the same place. What is the difference between us and the woodcutter chopping wood, also considered as a questioning sword? Lu Jinglong said helplessly, blam me. Rong Chong laughed loudly. Lu Jianxian was hypocritical. I didn't care. I immediately sacrificed my life flying sword and hacked at the patriarch hall. Lu Jiqing had to keep up. Lu Jinglong did not pass the sword, but after one hand was negative he raised one hand and pointed, leaving a talisman and then pointing to the ground, finally leaving 2 talisman and 2 sentences. There is a 3 feet above the head. Turn around and ask Jian again. 3 swords repair the original road back. Only 1 patriarch hall, which was completely reduced to ruins, remained. Lu Jinglong asked Lu Jiqing and Rong Chong to stop. The next moment they moved, they overlapped with the 3 people in Quanyong Pavilion. Many monks gathered here to look at the scenery. Then there was a thunderous, thrilling, loud sound like thunder in the ears, but the monks looked around but they didn't know what they were inside. The entire Qianglin Zhongzhou mountain and the neighboring peaks were clearly indistinguishable. Where did it come from? What's happening? Lu Jinglong and the 3 people were mixed in the mountain road and went down the mountain. Stayed at Tongqiandu for 2 days, and then they took a leisurely ferry ride to Jidu in the middle of the city. After visiting the capital of the Daoist dynasty and the Shuilong cave, they parted ways. Lu Jinglong took his disciple Baisho and boarded the Fengyuan ferry. Diyu and Yen Ting temporarily followed Rong Chong and the others to the Duckweed Sword Lake. Lu Jiqing was going to travel along that Dadu all the way. On the ferry, Baisho and Baixian are acquaintances. Lu Jinglong found the little girl named Chai Wu according to Qin Ping's instructions in the letter, took out 2 talisman papers, put them on the table and let Chai Wu learn to draw talisman by himself. Chai Wu painted meticulously, anyway he painted the scoop according to the gourd. Baixian laughed. This grassy girl, what about ghost paintings? Millet Grains sat aside and applauded Chai Wu gently. Lu Jinglong glanced at a talisman with aura, knowing it in his mind, and asked with a smile. Chai Wu, do you want to learn to draw talisman? As long as you don't delay your main practice, you will be more skilled and not crush your body. Chai Wu nodded and said, if Sect Master Lu is willing to teach, of course I am willing to learn, but my spiritual qualifications are not very good. Lu Jinglong couldn't help asking, why do you feel that your cultivating aptitude is not very good? Chai Wu was a little embarrassed, shook his head and stopped talking. Qin Shanzhu personally taught twice before, and it is not rare to find himself in the future, and only let Mr. Xiao Mo do it for him. It's okay. I eat and drink on the ferry. A caddy of wine a day is the ferry house wine that can only be drunk by the gods on the mountain. The taste is not so much like drinking a knife compared to the inferior wine at the wine shop under the mountain. But the aftertaste is long, so you have to talk about your conscience and you have to recite the Lord Qinshan. Furthermore, don't look at Zhou Hufa, who is usually confused. He is smart and has a good memory. Looping up and down the mountain, inside and out, the right guardian remembers everything and knows everything. So what Zhou Mili knew was basically what Qin Shanzhu knew. The wind and kite ferry goes all the way across the sea to the south and is about to enter the land of Aquarius. At night, Lu Jinglong and me, you were standing on the bow of the ship, and Xiaomili did not continue to patrol the night, worrying about disturbing you, me and Mr. Lu talking about major issues. In my house, lying on the table holding my fingers for a few days, when can I pass Luopa Mountain and when will I reach Xindu Mountain? After me you left, Lu Jinglong stood alone beside the railing. Thinking of something Qin Pingon repeatedly urged in the letter. The key is that the secret letter also set up an exclusive door restriction that Lu Jinglong taught Qin Pingon. In the second letter, Lu Jinglong was reminded that he must sneak into the fairyland and don't publicize it. If possible, in the Patriarch, don't mention it inside the hall. Especially be careful of the great sword Immortal by Chong in the north. It's not that you can't believe in the sword repair of Taihui Jianzong, but that the speaker has no intention and the listener has the heart. Your Lu Jinglong's natal flying sword is really special. In the future, waiting for you to retreat next time trying to ascend to the Ascension realm, I will come to Taihui Jinzong to help you guard the pass. If you are a native swordsman of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, you must be the Xianxia rank on the brochure of the Summer Palace. And the two natal flying swords of Qin Pingon, the Caged Bird and Jing Diue, are the sub-A and the middle. Of course, the rank of the sword repair flying sword can be improved and it is not static. Lu Jinglong smiled knowingly, muttering to himself, "It's really more mother-in-law than me." The magical powers of his flying sword rules. Like now where Lu Jinglong's eyes are, there are rules. When the Fengyuan ferry passed by over the Changchun Palace ferry, Lu Jinglong quietly disembarked with his sword midway, and was about to go to Dali capital. At a ferry house inn I met the Han Zhoujin, Lu Jinglong's self-registered number. As a result, Han Zhoujin caught sect master Lu by surprise. Lu Jinglong had to explain to her repeatedly that I don't drink. At the end of the ferry I found Lu Jianxian, who had caught up with Feng Kite and boarded the ship again. He was murderous and he wanted to ask people about the sword. Sword of Coming Chapter 913. In the early morning, Qin Pingon stretched out his hand to hold the hidden official jade plate in his sleeve, shrank the mountains and rivers, and came to the steps outside the Summer Palace in one step. It was different from the Summer Palace where the gate was closed all day long. Meaning, unlike those vassal cities, there are no concierge monks here, and there is no hindrance to visit the door if something happens. Just don't wander around. If you have something to say, leave after talking simply and neatly. If you want the hidden official Jianxiu to take out a drink and treat the guests, don't think about it. In the early Summer Palace, apart from the eldest sword fairy, Qin Shi and Qi Tingji were unable to cross the gate. Ning Yao never set foot in the Summer Palace before landing in Feishing City and temporarily taking the position of hermit official. Fan Dach was cleaning the courtyard early in the morning. He was tapped on his shoulder and someone shouted with a smile, "Dach." When Fan Dach heard such a familiar voice, he almost didn't cry on the spot, turned his head and shouted, "His Lord Hidden Officer." Qin Pingon patted Fan Dach's arm lightly and said, "Let's walk and talk." In fact, the general situation of the hidden official line has been heard by Ning Yao before, but Fan Dach obviously said it more carefully and Qin Pingon listened patiently. The first 5 young sword repairmen who entered the Summer Palace were all extremely qualified sword fairy embryos. Even if they were not the Golden Core sword repairers now, they were already in Feishing City before they became the hidden official sword repairmen. Inside the ancestral hall, each has a seat. Within a few years, the group of teenagers and girls have officially become hermits one after another. Today's Golden and Jade genealogy in Feishing City can be divided into the ancestors of the monks, the 3 inner monks of the criminal officer, and the 4 cities, 8 mountains and 12 vassal forces outside Feishing City, such as the chief worshipper Deng Liang. Zifu Mountain, this sword repairman in the Jade Pure realm is equal to the qualifications to build a mansion, and he can pass down his own Dao pulse. Of course, a monk can have multiple identities. After the 5 genius sword repairs, the Summer Palace collected another group of members, all of whom were still young girls with good aptitudes. However, for the time being they can only be regarded as alternates, and they still need to conduct regular inspections for 3 to 5 years. This is a rule established by Lin Junbai and Song Gaoyuan that year. The new Jinshi, similar to the secular officialdom under the mountain, will walk in various yamen as a formal fill-in. In the previous experience, not all candidates can become true hidden official sword repairers. Some sword repairers who failed to become full members in the end, and the fertilizer does not flow into the field of outsiders, they went to the Summer City where Dongbu and Suning errand. Qin Pingon nodded and said, "In this matter the hidden official line is indeed suspected of pinching." Fan Dach smiled and said, "His master in Feishing City, no one is ashamed to fight with us. Besides, for those young sword repairers, it is undoubtedly the first choice to become our hidden official sword repairer. So, it's not that the threshold here is too high. The number of sword repairs in the Summer Palace today has at least doubled." Qin Pingon asked a series of questions. "There's no rumors outside? Is there anyone who is arguing about the hermit's sword repair style? The Summer Palace did not open a separate account book for those who speak justice?" Fan Dach smiled. "There are some gossips, but it's not too much, so we don't care too much." Qin Pingon patted Fan Dach on the shoulder. "Deche, you are still honest. Now the hidden official sword repair is mainly responsible for three things in monitoring. Collect espionage and train dead men. Responsible for all the affairs of the Summer City. There are actually less than half of the Xianxia who stayed at the Summer Palace today. Luo Zhini and Fan Dach have been responsible for the daily affairs of the Summer Palace for these years. Wang Xinshui and Chang Taiqing are responsible for the collection, screening and inquiries of various types of intelligence. Dong Wu is now the city lord of the Summer City, and Su Ning is the deputy city lord. They need to be on time every day to train spies and dead men. Landed in the Summer City. Gu Jianlong is still traveling outside as the protector of the hidden official line, and the criminal officer in the same line of sword repair experience, each with a group of young sword repairs, in a distant enclave with a monument. The 5 masters of the Feixingcheng ancestor hall passed on sword repairs, and now they are also scattered around, performing their duties and practicing outside. Outside the entrance of the Summer Palace, there is a pair of couplets, which are the unusual pair of dragon gates, written in scripts with divine and ancient steel scripts. The beauty of the ages has resulted in the clean energy of the mountains and rivers, the high mountains and the deep swords, and the light of my sword like a rainbow. The barren world bowed its head to this for 10,000 years. One city is high, the sky is wide, the sky is wide and the sky is full of wine, and there are 2 kinds of swordsmanship in my hometown like a cloud. With Hauran Jiuzhou there are 2 kinds of swordsmanship. Fan Dach smiled knowingly. This couplet is naturally the handwriting of our hidden officer. It is said that it was a time between the wars that year, when Chou Miao Jianxian invited the hermit to write a couplet, but the hermit refused, saying that her own handwriting was not good enough. As a result, even the 4 guardians led by Guizhujiu were included. After the rebellion, the hidden official only agreed to dictate the content, and asked Chou Miao and Lin Junbai to write the upper and lower couplets separately, but the result was still not successful, and finally there was this couplet that was later known to all the young and old in Feixing City. It is the local sword repairmen who have a bad view of the hidden organs. They can't fault this couplet. They have to pinch their noses and say, "That dog day does not have such a small padded jacket." No wonder the old sword fairy would let this. The guy is a hermit. Qin Pingon crossed the threshold of the lobby and entered the familiar lobby. There was almost no change in the seats. It was still a small table, a futon. At most he changed the owner. Above the table the 4 treasures of the study and the bookmaster. The books are placed at will according to the owner's preference. Qin Pingon did not sit on the main seat, but chose the seat that once belonged to Lin Junbai. The furnishings on the watch table should be the position of Gu Jianlong, 2 sword scores, a number of seals, and a confession from the palace treasury in exchange for his military exploits. After hearing the news, Luo Zhini, Wang Xinshui, Chang Taiqing, and the 3 young people who were in the Summer Palace in their early years are now regarded as old men in the line of hermits. Seeing the blue shirt, Luo Zhini was stunned. She quickly recovered her expression, smiling and clasped her fists and said, "I have seen the hermit." Wang Xinshui and Chang Taiqing also smiled and held their fists, and naturally they called the hidden officials. Even if Ning Yao is present, it is estimated to be the same. Qin Pingon smiled and waved his hand, one idler. Especially Wang Xinshui, one of the 4 big doglegs in the past, tears in his eyes, slipped his footsteps, and he sat next to Master Yingguan and began to sigh and ask warmth. As a result, Qin Pingon slapped him on his forehead. Wang Xinshui was sad. "Return to your seat." Chang Taiqing asked, "His Lord Hidden Officer, do you want to call Dong Bu and them all from the Summer City?" Qin Pingon smiled and shook his head, "No." Luo Zhini seated each of them. On top of her table, there was a pot of winter plums, which was cut properly, and next to a pot of calamus, the verdant was dripping. At the moment Jian Xiu staying in the Summer Palace, almost all teenagers still have a bit of childishness on their faces. At this moment, one by one was jammed at the door, staring wide-eyed, carefully looking at the legendary hidden officer. When Qin Pingon was the 2nd shopkeeper of the wine shop, they were still young. At that time, most of them were sword repairs in the lower 5 realms. Of course, it was impossible to go to the wine shop to drink. After becoming a hermit, Qin Pingon stayed in the Summer Palace without showing up except for going to the battlefield. Besides, every time the young hermit rushes to the battlefield, there are so many tricks who can recognize it. Had it not been for Lu Ji's words, who would have believed that this stranger woman, who made so many bachelors miss her, would be the second shopkeeper. Therefore, because of this move, the current monks of Quanfus line have circulated a well-known famous saying. There is really no reason to make a shame and not even pick up money without making money. However, two of the teenagers had seen the second shopkeeper ask a boxer from a woman from a foreign country from afar. Anyway, they were pitying Xianxia with one punch. More ways, they are not pure martial arts and they can't see much. But in the street, the cheers rang loudly, especially when the second shopkeeper was knocked down by a punch. All the people who watched the game and bet were just like being beaten up and whistled vigorously, especially the Guizhuzhou who had beat gongs and drums all the way on the wall. Luo Zhini glanced at the door. All go back to work. It can be seen that Luo Zhini, as the Jianxiu who is second only to Ning Yao in the Summer Palace, is still very dignified in her daily affairs. The young girls immediately dispersed and returned to the government office to handle affairs. It's just that the young sword repairers were happy and talked all the way. Today's Summer Palace. Although the sparrows are small and complete, there are many departments: supervision departments, inspection departments, book records, secret archives, and stolen punishment warehouses. Often there is only one room in a government office. Except for the two largest supervisory departments and inspection departments, there is only one person in the other official government offices. Jianxiu, a young man who returned to the government office of the government office, was born in Yuhu Street and was born in Yuhu Street. He was now in charge of the archives room. The bookshelves in the house are attached to 3 walls, and books and brochures are stacked on top of each other. On the roof, thousands of slips of paper and memo pads are all in the same kind of handwriting in a book. If the couplets in the lobby of the Summer Palace are written like a slightly drunkard who is drunk, they look ancient but they are sharp and vigorous. Then the lowercase text on these notes looks like someone who never drank alcohol. People who are always sober are meticulous and never make mistakes. Therefore, the young sword repairer who could have entered the Zhangkan division voluntarily asked to work here, and dealt with the secret records all day long, and became a gentleman who did not have the opportunity to go out to practice and who would pass the sword. In the lobby, Qin Pingon wiped the case with his sleeves and smiled casually. The 8 hills outside the city, including Zifu Mountain, the criminal officer Wuchuan Mansion 3, are so divided up. We should take at least 2. In this position, even if you are scolded as squatting in the pit and not shit, it doesn't matter. When the Zhu Shirtang is discussing matters, you can directly ask for 3 at the beginning. Of course, it is not easy for Ning Yao to talk about this kind of thing, but you, for example, let Fan Dach take the lead and Wang Xinshui to follow, and then let Gu Jianlong say a few words of justice. In the end, 2 of the hills were finally won. It was nothing more than 1 from each of the criminal official Chuanfu. I think it's not a big problem. The 422 pattern, Qi Shou and Gao Yiha's bottom line at the time was almost like this. The 8 hills are different from vassal cities such as the Summer, Drag the Moon and Wukuei. If the latter wants to operate properly, they have to take out a considerable amount of sword repairs to distract themselves from general affairs. But Zifu Mountain, this kind of feng shui treasure land, in addition to constructing a second great defense formation, is more like a place of cultivation. It will not share too much manpower in the hidden official line. Besides, if there are more sword repairs in the Summer Palace, 2 more will be made. In this dojo in the future, the 2 Yuan Ing sword practitioners will have a chance to cultivate their swords. Luo Zhini couldn't help it. Say it earlier? Qin Pingon held sleeves with both hands and smiled and said, "Do you treat me as the fortune teller of the unexplored prophet, or should I bang my head against the colorful world, and then greet you with my throat?" Luo Zhin intends to deflate endlessly. Chang Taiching held back his laugh. Qin Pingon stretched out a hand, tapped his finger on the case table lightly and slowly said, "I have a suggestion, you can listen to it. The line of hidden officials can open up a city alone, we just need to pay for it. Ask for it in the same line as Chuanfu. Of course, people are willing to take the initiative to give it. The larger the size of the city, the better. It can be built in Dalongjueo and Xilongjueo, which are 800 miles northeast of the Summer City. Inside the Summer Palace, except for the sword repairs in a few key positions, it may be necessary to put everything at hand for the time being. Let it go, of course, it is best to take care of it. Go. Grab someone." Chang Taiching was shocked immediately and said, "How much do you want to grab?" Qin Pingon continued, "Strive to a population of 600,000 to 1 million from Fuyazhou and Tonggishao within 30 to 50 years. It doesn't matter if there are any trainers here. As for the construction of a new city, I have previous experience in the summer city. I must not need outsiders to help, but to draw the flow of people the north and the south without 100 sword repairs to escort, it is difficult to guarantee that there will be no accidents. During this period, a large number of Xianxia ferry boats need to be used. As well as 2 stable routes, formulate detailed and accurate road maps, and set up a series of station points along the way. The criminal officer and Chuanfu must cooperate with each other, but remember that they are only cooperating with us, and Wang Xinshui smiled and answered, no reward. Luo Zhini raised his eyebrows, talking about remuneration involving the great cause of Feixingcheng, should have been sincere cooperation. In the matter of robbing people, you don't need to be a treasure for any training person. By the way, it is the best. It doesn't matter if you don't have it. The only thing to do is to grab those farm monks. I know that they are very expensive now and all forces are respected as guests. You may not be willing to travel long distances and leave your homeland just after you settle down. So it's okay to sap and cover sacks. Since you can't do it first, you can't do it. It's a must. We can make promises to these monks. Given the status of worship and guest, the number of peasant practitioners must be at least 20 or 30. The more the better. We must make an agreement with them early. First of all, in addition to guaranteeing their personal interests, they can also be allowed to take people to leave the country and rush to the new city. They can be relatives, family members, or direct disciples. You are similar to the household registration status of a summer city. Even if they leave the household registration and return to their hometowns in the future, it can be regarded as a special kind of customs, which can be hereditary for 3 generations, which means that their descendants will be guided by this way in the future, and they will be able to come and go freely for almost 100 years. The place of all the vassals of Feixingcheng, including the summer palace. Wang Xinshui nodded and said, it is necessary for everyone in Wuxia world to feel that it is a privilege to obtain the household registration and the certificate issued by Feixingcheng, which in itself can attract foreigners to take root here. Secondly, within Jiazi, the Feixingcheng monks must give them enough respect within the framework of the rules. Once the 60-year time limit is over, if they still want to leave, they will never force them to stay. They should give money, don't hesitate. It's a good time to get together and have a good time, and the 2 sides have a long-lasting fragrance of incense. So if they leave Feixingcheng and want to go back to open the mountain, or seek official status in various new dynasties and vassal states, we can help, such as the sword repair of the summer palace, or even serve for a certain year. For worship and guest, remember that you must agree on a good number of years, otherwise it will be too worthless. In this way, the group of farm monks will have no worries about the future, and the trip to ascend to the city can become a precious qualification for them. It's a trade of forcing melons, but it makes people chew and sweeter. Hearing this, Luo Zhini asked tentatively, if we secretly find the mountain power of those farmer monks and make a discussion, will we not have to grab people? Maybe many powers are willing to go on polls and ask for help. We cooperated because according to the various spy reports collected from the summer palace, the farm monks in the north and south, either taking the initiative or being instructed by others, have begun to lower the threshold and collect disciples arbitrarily, let alone become farm monks. The threshold is not high. In the past, in the wild and awe-inspiring world, no one wanted to be a farmer's child only because of low status and low income. Today is different from the past. The higher the status, the more the income, so the so-called 30 there are not many people. Maybe we find 2 or 3 schools and we will have them. Now he is a fool and he also knows what Feixingcheng means in this colorful world. Otherwise, no one will try to guess whether it is a Middle-earth Confucian temple in the vast world or Bai Yujing in the Qingming world. Qin Pingon hesitated for a while, seemingly worried, but finally nodded and said, this matter is feasible, you should hurry up and work out a general charter. Luo Zhen thought for a while and promised, I can come up with a draft plan within a day. It's a pity that Lin Junbai and the others are not there, otherwise Luo Zhini would be more confident. The book is mad, the literati is noble, always feel that he has done the world's things, in fact he can't even do a few things at hand. At the time Lin Junbai and Chao Dagon were young, but they were very familiar with the economy. Chang Taiching immediately realized a potential hazard and asked, if you just sap and grab people the problem is not big, but if it is too much involved with the mountain dynasties and mountain forces, we will inevitably get involved in the summer palace. To cause too much trouble, will it affect the detached status of the hidden official line in Feixingcheng? Although Chang Taiqing and Luo Zhini are on the same mountain, but the matter is very important, Chang Taiqing will never hold back because of personal friendship. What's more, there is a tacit understanding in the Summer Palace and the wrong person is right. Since no one can avoid making mistakes, then anyone can check for others to fill in the vacancies. Qin Pingon nodded and said, "Of course. Once we can't grasp the measure, we will lose more than we gain. If one day in the future Ascension City and all the vassal forces question at least the strength of rewards and punishments of the hidden official sword repair, the severity of their actions may be. If there is a certain problem, it becomes a habit to question whether the hidden official line should take action against someone, which means that there is a big problem in the Summer Palace." Luo Zhini was a little guilty because he thought it simple. It's no wonder that someone hesitated just now because he had expected this hidden danger caused by spreading along this vein. Qin Pingon smiled and looked at them as if saying, "What you do, isn't it just to solve the problem?" Chang Taiqing tentatively said, "It's better to let the criminals do this kind of thing and we should appropriately separate some of the interests. On the table, let the criminals and monks to manage relations with those outside forces, anyway their number. If there are too many, we are only responsible for secretly planting spies and dead men, and to cooperate with the criminals and monks so that the emperor is not far away. If our sword repair encounters an accident, we will fall into the danger of being weak and weak. If you don't pay attention, you will suffer damage. Hermit, what do you think?" There is also an unwritten rule in the Summer Palace. Whoever raises doubts and denies others, it is best to have some solution to the problem himself, but it is not demanding. Chou Miao Jianxian once chatted with Luo Zhenya's friends in private. He spoke highly of this. He said that as long as the summer residence develops this kind of cognition, it will eventually form a good inertia similar to customs, traditions and rules. The official can be said to have done a great job. Still very Jianqi Great Wall. Otherwise I just blindly talk about Tai Haoren. Very good, it can be regarded as 3 birds with 1 stone. Qin Pingon lost a glance of approval and nodded. But you can't tell the whole story. The hidden official line has to continue top-inch the tip. Under the premise of judging the situation and keeping a few private sites, the number can be small but the background is deep. The potential is good and in addition, it is necessary to ensure that the sword repair embryos in all allied forces in the future, as long as they want to practice superior swordsmanship or travel far away, they will have to think of the Summer Palace at the first time, not the criminal officers' line. Luo Zhen was relieved. "I will formulate a specific plan in accordance with this general direction." Qin Pingon suddenly asked, "Jiaqin's 7-year discussion, the golden pill repairer who was thrown out of the Patriarch Hall by Ning Yao?" Luo Zhini said, "For these years, Gu Jianlong has been in charge of staring at this person in secret. The fact that he was removed from the genealogy back then was regarded as a shameful shame by this person, but he has hardly said a complaint outside, and he has been in retreat for many years. To concentrate on sword training should be to enter the nascent soul realm as soon as possible so that you can return to the Patriarch Hall." Qin Pingon asked, "Where are the 2 recommenders and guarantors?" Luo Zhini shook his head. Qin Pingon said, "You didn't let you avenge your personal revenge." Luo Zhini nodded and understood. Qin Pingon squinted his eyes and said, "To understand the truth, pure sword repair is pure love, hatred and hatred. The sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi has nothing to do. It can't be solved with the questioning sword. So I am afraid, but there is. So one thing is destined to ask the sword to be useless and hard work for a lifetime is useless, so what should I do? It's hard to get rid of my anger. Should I go to my shop to drink?" In the past, the big deal was to hand over swords on the battlefield, to see who had the greater combat exploits and killed more monsters, and whoever had a louder voice and more reason. All personal grievances are often limited to a few private nagging, at most a few cursing on the wine table. Once at the Great Wall of Jianqi I went to the head of the city, and when I got off the head of the city I saw you at the wine table, but there was no dead person. In today's Great Wall of Sword Qi, the sword repairers go out to practice again and begin to gradually deal with various forces. When they return home they are dead. Qin Pingon suggested, "Actually the threshold of the summer residence can be high, but the door face is big. It only talks about the installation of spies and the training of dead men. Whether it is sword repair, good aptitude, high realm is not the most important thing. The monk is careful and cruel at the same time." Chang Taiqing said, "I'll talk to Dong Bu and Su Ning about this when I look back." From beginning to end Fan Dach couldn't put his mouth in. Now there is a mantra in Fei Xingcheng, You can't even see the gate of the summer residence. There was a young sword repairman who failed to fill the vacancy before, and went to the summer city to take a job as usual. Once laughed at someone on the wine table. After leaving the summer palace, I gradually found myself an ordinary person. But before that I always felt like I was a waste. Qin Pingon said with a serious expression, "Be careful of the various infiltrations of Feixiangcheng from the outside world." Although all the outsiders in the 4 vassal cities have established separate archives, I heard from Dach that there are currently 1,600 records in the book. Many people to say ugly their responsibilities, the criminal officials and the 2 lines of Chuanfu, are their business, but our summer residence has to regard them as potential enemies. In today's colorful world there is a mixture of fish and dragons, and even weird gas trainers will be there. Just talk about the Hauran world, there are Nanhai lone horsemen, passers, plagues, corpses, hangers and mirror sellers and other monks, and the Qingming world there are also rice thief, corpse, Zhou Xian, rolling red and crisp hand, porter, the man who carried the coffin, the envoy of the mountain patrol, the lady dressing officer, the knife hunter, the one character teacher, he was a master. All kinds of unbelievable magical powers, various methods and weird methods, cannot be prevented, such as the plague that seems to erupt without warning. Maybe it is a certain plague god, which has long been hidden in a certain vassal city, especially the kind that specifically targets the city. The large-scale, natural disasters and man-made disasters of gas trainers must be prepared early. In the same way, all hilltop mansions including Zifu Mountain will definitely charge different numbers of maids and handymen in the future. 8 hills, is it necessary to beware of those the infiltration of the mountain patrol envoy? Does the hidden official sword repair need to inspect the water sources in various places on time? In this matter, apart from the secret investigation of the Summer Palace, there must be no slack. It must be implemented in specific matters. The criminal officer must work together with Chuanfu to make preparations together early, just in case. Moreover, this matter must be the top priority of the entire Patriarch Hall. Besides, you guys should be very clear about one thing. We couldn't find all the wild and dark chests in the Summer Palace. Qin Pingon raised his finger and pointed at the sky. Assuming that there is a rainstorm that has passed away his hands and feet, how can the ordinary masters cover it? What if someone moves his hands and feet in the rain? Is it necessary for someone to look at the 4 cities? Right? Qin Pingon shook his sleeves again. If you want to do something in the rain, it must be covered with dark clouds before it rains. At any rate, there is still a sign. What about the wind? Or the city will be expanded in the future, and there will be various plantings on the streets. What kind of floral scent will be planted with ornamental plants and flowers? Qin Pingon opened a booklet casually, twisted his fingers and said in a deep voice, "Don't forget there are also some books on the school." Qin Pingon seemed to be talking to himself. In the future, the dead men and spies we will cultivate will suddenly start the 2-sided business. How should the summer criminals guard and discriminate? Luo Zhenya's scalp was numb. Qin Pingon returned to his senses and said, "The bystanders are clear, so some young sword repairers in the Summer Palace must put themselves in the ground, pretending to be the enemy of Feixiangcheng, and do offensive and defensive deductions with you on the battlefield. The enemies of Feixiangcheng Zhenxiu are no longer the only ones fighting face-to-face on the battlefield. There will be more and more conspiracies and tricks of this kind. The one who can really shield Feixiangcheng from wind and rain is not the large moats that stand still, but here you. It is the sword repair of our Summer Palace and the hidden official line. But in the final analysis, if you want to really solve the problem, you still have to ask the sword. In the colorful world, there is no thing that Feixiangcheng Zhenjian can't solve. If there is, there will be 2 games. If it is not enough, it will only be 3 games. The world is scared and no one dares to easily reach out to Feixiang City. For example, when you follow the vines to find out a certain behind-the-scenes power, Feixiangcheng must kill the chickens and the monkeys. There is no hesitation. The questioning sword must be fast and accurate, and it must be huge. The opponents, whether it is the sect on the mountain or the dynasty under the mountain, only uprooted, cut off its incense and cut off its country. On the premise of ensuring that it will not kill indiscriminately, it will truly cut the weeds and roots. Fan Dach finally had the opportunity to speak and asked softly, "Isn't it better to hold a meeting in the Patriarch's Hall? For the hermit, isn't it better?" Qin Pingon said helplessly, "I won't stay for long this time. In a few days, There will be a celebration for the creation of the next sect of Luapa Mountain in Tongyi's Hao. I must hurry back. Next time I return here it may take 20 to 30 years. Later. And for some reasons I am not suitable for showing up in the Patriarch Hall at the moment. Qin Pingon rubbed his eyebrows. Our chief worshipper will definitely establish a sect in Wuxia Xianxia in the future, and Deng Liang will probably personally serve as the first suzerain of the Judu Xianxia sect. Luo Zhini frowned slightly and asked, is he worried that the next sect created by Deng Liang will be a Kendo sect with a real name? The Daxuandu Temple is similar to the Qingming world. As a Taoist sword immortal, the monks in the Taoist temple are of course the identity of the Taoist genealogy, but in fact quite a number of direct disciples are actually pure sword cultivators with the title of Taoist priest. All the cultivation of the Taoist priests, the study of all the Taoist magic techniques handed down by the ancestors of Xian Du Guan, are all for the purpose of assisting swordsmanship. Chang Taiqing said, with Chief Deng's character, even if he will leave Feixingcheng in the future, I believe he will actively choose to go out of the house. Except for a small group of direct disciples, he will not take away more sword repairs. Chang Taiqing was not embarrassed to speak too bluntly. Even if Deng Liang is the chief consecrator, he dare to think so, dare to do it? To put it bluntly, even if it was deep in Chang Taiking's heart, Deng Liang was still half an outsider, and he could only be regarded as half a hometown sword repairman. Chang Taiqing is still so, not to mention the ordinary local sword repair. Qin Pingon shook his head and said, even if Deng Liang took away a group of local sword repairmen who took refuge in Zifu Mountain, these are nothing. I don't care about this. Even if the sect sword repairs more occupy the colorful world, it will be soaring. Sword luck in a part of the city is still not a problem. These are what Deng Liang and the future sect should get, and the colorful world is so vast. Even if there is one more Kendo sect, it happens to be Deng Liang and the Judu Mountain. For Feixingcheng and Deng Liang they are both good things. I'm just worried that Deng Liang's successor as well as members of the Patriarch Hall have no relationship with Feixing City, but this person thinks that Feixing City should make concessions to their sect. In addition to his identity as a sword repairer, Deng Liang is also the master of the peak of Judu Mountain's Suiren Peak, and he is also a veiled and green man who bears part of Judu Mountain's luck. Therefore, Deng Liang's existence itself is an invisible bridge connecting Judu Mountain and Xianxia. In Deng Liang's hands, especially the next time the colorful world opens, Judu Mountain Chi-Chi practitioners will flood in, and within a few years, they will be able to cultivate a large number of Yinling and ghost cultivation, maybe in just 300 to 500 years. With this, Howren Judu Mountain can leap into the authentic, with both the upper sect and the lower sect. Deng Liang's cultivation aptitude and his close relationship with the three sword repairmen of Shizhou can definitely learn from the masters of Bojizai's lineage. Qin Pingon would only open one eye and close one eye on this matter. Just as Chang Taiqing said, he believed in Deng Liang's character. Qin Pingon was only worried that the former hidden officer's fellow swordsman, the current chief worshipper of Feixing City, and the future first suzerain of the Xianxia sect, due to the gradual change of identity, one day he was caught in an embarrassing dilemma. Feixing City does a good job of gathering and dispersing, starting well and ending well. If the powers are divided according to the yamen of the Yamashita dynasty, the criminal officer line is almost equivalent to holding the official department and the military department. Chuanfu is in charge of the household and engineering department. The Summer Palace is equivalent to the Ministry of Justice. As for the rest of the Ministry of Rights, it is estimated that it depends on the college that is about to be built. Not surprisingly, Deng Liang and the 6 branch offices of Feixing City would have a pretty good relationship. In the best case, the covenant between the two parties is long and stable. The worst outcome is that the appearance is in harmony, and the eyes are turned into enemies. Pursue the former and avoid the latter. Once Deng Liang chooses to practice purification in the future, such as pursuing an ascension realm, but Judu Mountain sect, because of a conflict with Feixingcheng, becomes more and more intense and becomes out of control, and eventually turns to a force like Bai Yujing? Wang Xinshui was a little puzzled. This kind of thing is at least the worst in hundreds of years. Although people must have near-term worries without far-sightedness, they still appear extremely abrupt in the series of words of Lord Hermit today. Qin Pingon quickly gave that reason. Ascension City doesn't need a pawn, but Ascension City needs a large number of true allies. The whole Wuxia world is watching every move of Feixingcheng. For example, the ascending city is like a big dungeon. If the water is turbulent and unpredictable, there will be fewer people building a city next to the water. If the water is flat and droughts and floods will ensure harvest, more people will build a city on the water. The robbing I mentioned earlier is not only to seek a vital benefit for Feixing City and the Summer Palace, which must be done in this way, but also to show the colorful world by the way. Those peasant gas trainers will be seen after the Jiazi contract expires. With the support of Feixingcheng, their respective forces can grow vigorously, that is, at a low place. Qin Pingon stretched out a palm, placed it on the table and then raised it up. Then Deng Liang's next sect was established at a high place. There are one high and one low, and Feixingcheng is handled properly, the relationship is harmonious and the hearts of the people are stable. In the future, the whole colorful world, when you look at the Great Wall of Jianqi, your vision and mentality will be different. This is the entire ascending city. Qin Pingon twisted his wrist, drew a big circle and then a small circle. This is a sword repair of the hidden official in the Summer Palace. Then put together and lightly tap the center of the circle, ourselves, personal selfishness. In the end, Qin Pingon drew the largest circle. If possible in the future, consider the problem and think about the whole colorful world. If there is no conflict between the big and small, this is the main road. The sun rises and the moon sets, the stars shift, the sword repairs the sword and the road trip. Chang Taiqing nodded gently. Luo Zhini was dazed. Wang Xinshui was silent for a moment and screamed, "The vision is so high and the mind is so big, but the truth is so simple, only we are the hidden officer, don't think of it as a second person." The hermit Sama did not speak with a straight face. A certain small mountain leader Guomeng was absent, and the other 3 doglegs were also absent. For a while Wang Xinshui was embarrassed and Fan Dach was really too and didn't know how to join in. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "If I don't speak it will take at least half an hour in the cold." Wang Xinshui smiled. Turning his head and glanced at the warm sun outside the lobby, it was especially warm today. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "To be honest, not only our summer residents but the other criminal officials Chuanfu are actually doing very well. Just talking about Qi Shou's criminal officer's line. It's very difficult for me to deliberately pick his thorn." Qin Pingon found that Fan Doc's eyes were a little strange after he had said this sentence. Qin Pingon had to clarify, "There is no talk in the words." Wang Xinshui immediately said, "The hidden official has the final say. Let's talk about the line of Wufu who hides in the cold palace." Qi Shuming knows that Nianxin is very close to the line of the hermit. He still spares no effort to cultivate the Wufu. He specially arranged 2 Jindan realm sword repairs and several surrenders. The military cultivators of the official line will regularly go to hide from the cold palace to feed the sword, and feed the move, to help young warriors who don't have much mobile phones temporarily, and try to increase their actual combat experience. Qin Pingon took out an object from his sleeve, threw it to Wang Xinshui and said, "There are all kinds of official history books and local county chronicles about the old mountains and rivers of Tonggishao. I have no time to sort them out. I just wrote 2 temporarily. A booklet similar to a bibliography as well as a booklet dedicated to recording notes, are all kept here at the Summer Palace, but the criminal can transcribe a copy in 1 line. If it is troublesome you can only run away and you can come to us in the future." Borrowing books here is convenient for the 4 major vassal cities of Feixingcheng to verify the identity and birthplace of the monks from other villages and the genealogy of the mountain. Wang Xinshui caught the object that had been lifted from the ban on landscapes, and glanced at the scene inside his eyes, which was a veritable mountain of books. He couldn't help but be shocked. So many books? Even if you use some mountain magic copying a book or engraving, it is definitely a huge and practical project. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "My brother Qi, I must be busy at this moment to save the abdomen of a gentleman with the heart of a villain, and he will panic for him." When Qin Pingon stood up, the 3 Jinxios stood up together, crossed the threshold with the hermit and walked out of the lobby. Qin Pingon stopped at the top of the steps, raised his head with his arms folded, squinted at the sun and said softly, "Some people are deliberate. If we find a certain what if by accident, then they must be careful. Be careful. For example, when Bai Yujing moved his hands and feet and we found conclusive evidence, then in the next 100 years, Bai Yujing Taoist monks will not be allowed to enter the colorful world. Then next time you open the door, it'll take the lead in blocking the door. When the door is open next time, I believe that I should at least regain the peak strength, return to the Jade Pure realm, and the martial artist will return to the true level, catch each other and fight a Baiyujing Immortal. Walking down the steps, Qin Pingon walked side by side with Fan Dach and Wang Xinshui, casually strolling around the various departments of the Summer Palace. Qin Pingon only entered the archive room. As for other places, he stood at the door and took a few glances. The person in charge here is a young man named Huai Zongji. He is only 14 years old and is already a sword repairman in the Sevuing realm. If you were at the Great Wall of Jianqi in the early years, you wouldn't be too genius, but don't forget that when a boy was young he followed Fei Xingcheng to Wuxia world, breaking through the border so quickly in Qin Pingan's eyes, it was a super fast. Therefore, Qin Pingan was very curious about why the teenager chose the file room. According to theory, there was no difficulty in going to the two departments with the highest relative threshold for monitoring and censorship. After hearing the inquiry from the hermit, Huai Zongji smiled shyly and only said that he liked reading. Qin Pingan didn't get to the bottom of the question. From the jade box on the east bookcase in the house, he pulled out a book of 7 secret records that recorded by Yujing's forces. Reading it casually, the easternmost part of a world, purple qi rising, the Taoist rhyme between heaven and earth is rich, all of them come from the Taoist forces of the Qingming world, of course led by Yujing, followed by Zuantuguan and Sui Qugong. In the inner hills and beyond there are some ordinary sect prefixes, and finally those small sects or casual cultivators with clear steps. In accordance with the old rules of the Summer Palace that year, Feishing City specially compiled 2 files of the Master and the Deputy, which recorded all the martial arts in the world and the monks of the upper 5 realms and the Earth Immortals. As the 2 booklets continue to thicken, the content of the archives gradually increases, which means a brand new world with more and more vigorous muscles and flesh and blood. It's just that these 2 top-secret files will not be placed on the side of the Summer Palace, but placed in the Patriarch Hall of Feishing City. Qin Pingan opened a page of the book and pressed his finger against a sticky note sandwiched between the pages. Unlike the previous white and black characters, this entry is written in red and red characters, which is obviously a more important comment. He turned his head and looked at the one standing beside him. The boy said with a smile, "Zongji, is this your own opinion?" The boy nodded vigorously. Qin Pingan smiled. "Similar opinions, if it's not a particularly urgent matter, you can slowly gather them together. When you have collected 30 or 50 items, they will be handed over to Luozhini or Fan Dach for a look. If possible, they will be formed on our file room. With a certain kind of rule, if there are more people in the future, there will be no rush. There is a rule-based charter so that colleagues who enter the archives later can act step by step. You, the top leader, will also save a lot of effort." The young man nodded vigorously, silently remembering. "Zongji, you must know that you are the first chief official of the archives of our summer residence. Apart from the daily affairs at hand, you can't be sloppy. You have to think more about how to make a way for future generations." The boy still pecks rice. "Zongji, do you know that the chief of a government office, besides setting an example and working diligently to do his job well, what else should he pay attention to?" This time the boy finally didn't nod his head but looked blank. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It is not too much. It is necessary to have a clear separation from the government offices, so that the water in each other's wells does not interfere with the river, and it is not allowed to intervene in other matters outside the house. But there is a threshold for this truth. It will only be needed in the summer residence many years later. So now you can take the time to read a few miscellaneous books, the changes in the yamen of some secular dynasties in history, and learn more about it. The phenomenon of officialdom and the rule of subordinate staff, and why the more the court was abolished, the more organizations eventually became more numerous, which eventually led to bloatedness. The more various government offices, the lower the efficiency of work. It seems that everyone is busy every day, and wait until the real if you want to advance a certain measure, it will only be extremely slow. Today's archive room does have a special meaning to Qin Pingan. After all the secret files and books that were moved from the Hinter Palace to the Summer Palace in those days were Qin Ping's categorized separately. It is not a simple and easy thing. So here Qin Pingan will naturally get a little extra close. Huai Zongji nodded and said, "Remember." After Qin Pingan left, Wang Xinshui deliberately slowed down and suddenly slapped Huai Kongji's head with a slap, lowered his voice and cursed with a smile. Couldn't I finally saw the hidden official? I didn't know how to seize the opportunity, so I can talk a few more words? Wang Xinshui squeezed the boy's ears. Do you know that our hidden officer only entered the threshold of your archives room? Don't say you're messing with me in the future. The Hermit-sama said that the beating must be done as soon as possible. Especially those young geniuses, maybe 100 years or several hundred years later, is a sword fairy. White Songji tilted his head, stood on tiptoe while smiling, quietly spread his hands towards Wang Xinshui. It turned out that the palm of the boy's palm was full of sweat. Even if you speak, you will definitely stammer. Let me talk about it. Wang Xinshui smiled and asked, what do you want to say? The teenager whispered, it's better for him to be a hermit. As for Ning Yao, who is temporarily holding the position of hermit, he should be the lord of the city whom everyone has come to expect. Wang Xinshui felt bad and immediately covered the boy's mouth. Sure enough, at the door, a green shirt reappeared with a smile on his face. White Songji was immediately dumbfounded. Fortunately, the Hermit-sama smiled and said, it's okay. The young man has no taboo. It is a good thing to dare to think, say dare to act and take it seriously. But Wang Xinshui's good governance is impressive. Wang Xinshui categorically said, my conceited official, I really don't want to conceal it. In fact, I am also a greenish youth. Luo Zhini and Chang Taiqing chose another hand-shoveled veranda, ready to return to their respective yams for official duties. Mentioned about Chief Deng earlier. Did you worry at the beginning that Lord Hidden Officer would dismantle Deng Liang's bridge across the river, and then abandon it after using it? Chang Taiqing asked in his heart. I was relieved when we discovered that this was not the case. On the contrary, we needed to build roads and bridges for Deng Liang and his next sect. Luo Zhini was silent. Chang Taiqing smiled and said, even if this is the case, you don't have to feel disappointed by the actions of the Hidden Officer. After all, he is dedicated to us ascending the city, seeking government in his place, practicing public practice, and in the officialdom there can be no only Qingfeng. Bright moon. Luo Zhini nodded and remained silent. Chang Taiqing finally ran to his mouth and swallowed it back forcibly. There is no need to be harsh on the hermit, but if you are disappointed with Qin Pingon, it is normal. Chang Taiqing was very thankful that he held it back. Otherwise he guessed that Luo Zhini would hold his hatred for a long time. In the other corridor, Qin Pingon went to Wang Xinshui's room to sit for a while after strolling through the houses, and then left with Fan Dach. Fan Dach hesitated for a while and told the truth. My lord, if you come a few years later, I might have to leave the summer palace on the initiative. I always feel that I can't help much. I think the only thing I can do is to make room. The position is given to others. In your words, it means squatting in the pit, drinking, eating and sleeping, but not shit. I haven't said such a thing? Yes. I remember clearly that Chen Sanqiu and Dong Huafu were both at the shop drinking. Deche, speaking so straightforwardly, I can't blame others for saying that you entered the summer residence by going through the back door. Fan Dach laughed. Deche, believe me, the summer palace needs smart people, but you also need silent people who will see people's hearts over time. You have to believe that they will see, and you must believe that you can do it. Qin Pingon whispered. A truly strong man has not only impressive feats, but also perseverance and meticulous dedication. Even in the end, we still won't be known and we won't be understood if we know it, but at least we know by ourselves that we have done something for this world. Just this sentence, Qin Pingon did not say it. Tugue Castle, one of the 4 vassal castles, is the same as Wuxia Castle, and it is also a city under the name of criminal officers. The current city lord is Pu Yu and the deputy city director Yi. Both of them are sword repairs in the Golden Core realm. The young geniuses of the Great Wall of Sword Qi are naturally members of the Patriarch Hall of Feishing City. These 2 people were both guarding sword repairs who blocked Qin Pingon back then, but at that time Ren Yi, who was responsible for guarding the first pass, was still at the Dragon Gate level. Ren Yi broke the realm of formation after landing in Feishingcheng. In contrast, City Lord Pu Yu, because the injury was serious and the rain curtain of a natal flying sword was severely damaged, making it very likely that Pu Yu would be very difficult to break the bottleneck of the Golden Core realm in this life. This is also one of the reasons why Pu Yu is the leader of Dragoon City. Ren Yi, a friend who doesn't want to achieve higher achievements on the road, is too distracted by the worldly affairs. In the early years of the Great Wall of Jianqi, in a fierce battle outside the city, they were all rescued by an old sword repairer with a strange face. On the battlefield there was an old sword repairer, who turned out to be born. During this time he passed by a battlefield, handed his sword Tricky and made a tough shot, just in time to rescue a group of young sword repairers including Puyu and Ren-yi. The fight was dangerous, and claimed to be a small win by fluke. Although the other party did not have a self-registration number, Puyu guessed the other party's identity at the time, and he must be the young hermit who is best at picking up omissions. South Shochin Bei Yingguan, two rival sword repairmen can win this title. It is by no means a vain name. Both sides are treacherous, chicken thieves and sinister. In today's Tuyue City Deliberative Hall, in addition to the two city owners, the criminal officer Qi Shou and Shui Yu who came from the line of Dijis Hai, and the group was circulating the pile of paper. In addition to the four sword repairmen who were about the same age, there was also an old Yuaning. Shui Yu shook the paper in his hand and smiled. What a strange name. The pseudonym is Dou-yi. It is indeed a very rare word. Puyu smiled and said, the word yi means governance and stability. If you add another word to form the word Yian, it will have the meaning of the world is peaceful again. Now that he was destined to be hopeless, Puyu was relieved to be the lord of the city. Over the years he had accumulated a lot of miscellaneous books and turned over if nothing happened. Puyu even wondered if one day he took off the burden of the lord of the city, and whether he could become a teacher. Qi Shu drank the tea silently and had a headache. With that guy's consistent virtue he would definitely change his way to trouble him. At the beginning of the spring of the 7th year of Jiachuan, Feixing City once held the second very formal meeting of the Patriarch Hall. It was also that crucial discussion that really laid the foundation for the division of internal responsibilities of Feixing City and the plan for external expansion. Back then there were 41 chairs in the Patriarch's Hall. Later 6 were added, but the 2 chairs under the hanging image were always empty. The 2 old Yuan in Jianxiu who belonged to the line of criminal officers came from Taixiang Street and Yuhu Street respectively. They were once vassal portals of the 2 large families of Qin and Nailan. Over the years the 2 old men have been teaching swordsmanship to young people. In Feixing City and Tuyue City, the criminal officers line set up a Soshan division and demon slashing academy respectively. The 2 old Yuan Yings sit in one of them and occasionally leave Feixing City quietly, both for those who go out to experience. The 5 realms sword repairmen secretly protect the road, and this so-called experience is not the travel of the genealogical monks in the world. What is the so-called red dust experience? Most of the sword repair casualties in Feixingcheng have appeared. In the course of the experience, in order to open up the site, determine the safety of the route and venture to explore the treacherous landscapes and secrets, encountered some unheard of weirdness and several guardians of the sword fell because of this and even no bones existed. In the end they were all ascended to Qingning. Several senior 5-level sword repairmen including Yao, personally went to these dangerous places with their swords. Just like the criminal officer who went out together with the hidden official sword repair this time, the guardian behind the scenes is an old Yuaning Jian repair. 4 thousands of years in the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Aside from those sword repairs that are inherently restricted by the flying sword, there has never been a weak sword repair papery realm. This tradition must not be lost in Ascension City. But I have to admit that after leaving the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the speed of all sword repairs is getting slower and slower. Of course Ningyao is an exception. And the emergence of the youngest generation of sword repairs, and it is becoming less and less unable to one crop after another like before. And it has sprung up like bamboo shoots after rain. At the same time the 2 old men were also in charge of a key to the sword building. Although the sword repairs of Feixing City still have their own masters, Feixing City has built a library named Wenjian Tower. With the 18 stops of sword qi improved by a liang, all sword repairs can now be practiced, and as for the ultimate divine essence to be learned, each depends on good fortune. In addition, the Summer Palace collected and sorted out a large number of Dao tactics, sword scriptures, and secret books that were originally forbidden for sword repairs of the past dynasties, all of which were collected in the heavily guarded Wenjian building. Many of the swordsmanship that had long since broken the inheritance of incense have a certain chance to find intergenerational disciples. For example, Tao Wen Wu Qingpei Song Kaiyun Yinshen and Gao Kuei, who had used swords for the last time in his lifetime, was to ask Longjun about the sword and so on. There are even 2 sword immortals, Luoshan and Zhuan, who betrayed the line of hidden officials. As long as the unique swordsmanship of these swordsmen has been recorded in the Summer Palace, young swordsmen in Xianxia today have hopes to learn them, but they do not force future swordsmen to recognize their ancestors and return to their ancestors. In the process of the sword repair of this swordsmanship, they must not deliberately conceal this matter during the inheritance of the swordsmanship that they have developed, and must write down the origin of this inheritance. At the beginning, the Summer Palace compiled a detailed booklet, which roughly stated the inheritance requirements and the threshold of practice for a certain line of swordsmanship. Therefore, if you want to pass on those swordsmanship, there are two requirements. One is that one's own natal flying sword and swordsmanship are compatible, and the other is that the battle is sufficient. Then, after the confirmation and approval of the criminal officer and the hidden officer, the young swordsman can ask the sword tower. Look through a certain book of swordsmanship and a certain cheat book corresponding to practice. Old Yuanying asked curiously. Ning Yao said vaguely on the previous trip to the wilds, only that it was the beginning of the hermit, but the group of them, since they have lost the Xuanpu and Tuyue of Xinjiang city. The two culprits of the mountain are ascending to the realm. Could it be that there are two new characters engraved on the head of the city? In fact, even this old monk knew that there was a criminal officer in the Great Wall of Jianqi named Haosu. Breaking that fairy hairpin city into two parts is of course very pleasant. But for the sword repairmen of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the issue of lettering has been the biggest issue since ancient times. Qi Shou looked at those sites and said helplessly, "Even if I ask, is it useful?" Ning Yaoming didn't want to say anything more. Shuiyu was also very surprised. Since so many important things have been done, why not tell the whole Feixing city directly? There is no reason to hide and tangle. Puyu laughed and joked. If you don't understand it, it's right, so you can't enter the summer residence. Back then, the three brothers from Bojizhai really wanted to enter the summer palace, but Ning Yao didn't agree. Otherwise, the current line of hidden officials is completely capable of fighting against the line of criminal officials. Today's Feixing city, there are 4 upper 5 sword repairmen. Senshin Ning Yao. There are no immortals for the time being. There are 3 sword repairmen in the Yupu realm, Qishou, Gaoyu and Deng Liang. There are 4 people in Yuanying realm. The old Yuanying Jianxiu from the line of 2 criminal officers, Shizhou from the line of Dojizhai, and Luo Zhini from the Summer Palace. In fact, at the Qin Mansion on Taishang Street, there are Qin Ji and the maid beside him, Qin Hui. Former master and servant, the 2 masters and disciples today are Yuanying realm and Yupu realm. It's just that, except for Ning Yao, no one knows for the time being. Qi Shou said coldly. If in the next meeting of the Patriarch's Hall, Qin Pingon asked us in Quan Mansion to take out a mountain top and hand it to the Summer Palace to take care of it. Do you agree or not? Old Yuanying slowly said. Why? Qi Shou said. Is it still a if the person who engraves, is it exactly Qin Pingon? Old Yuanying immediately said. Then give it. Although it was the sword repair of the criminal officer's line, the old man had nothing to hesitate about this kind of thing and he had to give it. Qi Shou nodded, as it should be. Shuiyu gloated and said, Sir, if Qin Pingon doesn't leave, what will you do? Qi Shou smiled and said, the home is full of people, the time and age are abundant, the muscles are healthy, the Lahwali is happy, the gentleman drinks and the joy is endless. The old Yuanying was confused. What is it? Puyu explained with a smile. From Mr. Kong Jie's Kong Yongji, there is also a copy on the copy of the Xianxian's seal, which is the side of the seal of one party, and the seal of the bottom is, but I have not reached the quartet. It was Mr. Kong Jie's feelings when he was young, when he was studying Lao Shao. You and Mr. Kong Jie still have the same surname, and you can reprint the score when you look back. But what the criminal officer meant is that fighting with people is full of fun. Rin Yi smiled and said, it's a shame that Lord Hermit is not present. Otherwise I will put on a smiley and playful expression right now. The old Yuanying surnamed Shao rubbed the handle of the chair with her palms and said, a scholar is like a bowel and you can curse a flower. But if Qin Pingon could really engrave a new character in the city, the old Yuanying would go to the wine shop to punish himself for 3 bowls. The wine bowl over there is not big anyway. After all, the old Yuanying was most disapproving of the seal. He has complained a lot over the years, all the flowers are pretty, and if you have the ability, you, the hidden official, go to the city to engrave a word. The matter of drinking, both thinking and not thinking about it. The reason for not wanting is simple. The old man can't save face. But after thinking about it carefully, the old man still hoped that the young hermit would actually engrave most of the letters. The hiding Han Xing Palace, which originally belonged to the private property of the hidden official line, now seems to have become a place exclusively for the pure martial arts of the criminal officer line. It's just that there is a tacit understanding between both sides on this matter. There are only 3 ancient official positions in the Great Wall of Jianqi. In addition to the hidden official and criminal officer, there are actually sacrificial officials, but the line of sacrificial officials has long been lost. It's rumored that the hiding Han Palace was the first place where the official's office was located, but the line of hidden officials, which was too eye-catching in Shao Sun's hands, occupied the long-abandoned hiding hall. Anyway, the old sword fairy didn't have anything to do with it. What to say, over time hiding in the cold palace is naturally regarded as the private property of the hidden official line, so that many young sword repairers who don't like to turn to the yellow calendar don't know any priests in the history of their hometown. The earliest Wufu embryos of the gang of hiding in the cold palace, and the first group of children who entered this place to practice martial arts and boxing have all grown up. As a line of criminal officers under the jurisdiction of Wufu, there are now a total of nearly 100 people, and the number and influence will become more and more significant in the future. A tall and handsome young man between the 2 boxing masters was alone in the martial arts arena today, throwing his punches like a dragon, whistling into the wind. There are a lot of big children squatting next to them, all of whom are the youngest in seniority. If you say that you become a sword repairman, it depends on God's reward or not to eat, or you can't ask for it, so it's recognized that the martial artist must learn boxing early. As a master, Jing Dafeng twice a day in the morning and evening came to the cold palace to teach boxing and fisting, each for an hour and a half. Jiang Yun brags while punching. Back then, the hermit came here to teach us some boxing. I was the only pure martial artist who got on the corners of the hermit's clothes, so what is my martial arts aptitude, do you understand? Actually, the hermit found me on a special trip in private. He said that among the 10 people back then, I was considered the best talent, which was much higher than others, so I had to make a small kitchen for me so that my martial arts training would not be wasted. Qualification: what does it mean to open a small stove? What does it mean, you know? I'm optimistic. I grab the white blade with my bare hands and can grab the flying sword casually. It is the true biography of the hidden official. According to the rules of his hometown, under normal circumstances, the right or wrong is never passed lightly. Even the guai may not have learned the bamboo wine. Now I hand it out with a punch. It is mostly because the blue is better than the blue. So even if the hermit feeds me the punch again, I have to be careful. On the edge of the martial arts field, someone said, "Oh? How careful?" Jiang Yun tipped his ears and immediately became unhappy. "Oh, who doesn't believe it? Stand up." The man stood there and replied with a smile, "I don't believe it." Jiang Yun rubbed his eyes and made sure that it was not his dazzling. He secretly swallowed his saliva, his eyes rolled sharply, thinking about how to remedy it to escape the catastrophe. The man smiled and stretched out his hand. "No need to remedy it, come, practice your hands just as I help you start a small stove so that no one will believe you." Jiang Yun cautiously rubbed his hands and said, "My lord hidden officer, I have missed you all these years. I am not like Su Gong and Yuan Zhaohua who have no conscience. Before practicing boxing every day I have to say 3 sounds of hidden officer in my heart. Only then will he deliver the first punch full of energy. Don't worry if you know the truth. Who doesn't know that the second shopkeeper is famously fair in business and the most reasonable? Then I will be moved with affection." There was an uproar around the martial arts field. Is that the legendary master hermit? The problem is that it's not so handsome, tall and mighty. It looks tall and thin while it seems to be similar to the teacher in the school. Is he really a great master of martial arts? Master Jing said that he had carefully taught Master Hermit a lot of boxing techniques, and now it seems that most of them are true. Qin Pingon temporarily let go of Jiang Yun's little thorn, and fisted and smiled with the 2 out-of-town martial arts who walked quickly to his side. "Thank you." A man and a woman, both in golden status, are almost in their 60th years, but their faces are obviously young, only in their early 40s. The 2 martial artists said in unison, "Don't dare to be." If it were elsewhere in Wuxia Xianxia, they would choose any place to start a mountain and establish a faction, which would have been a trivial matter. As for why the 2 martial arts masters who were among the 3 realms of refining gods came to Feixingcheng, they have hard-to-read scriptures, and they flee from the enemies on the mountain. Besides, in addition to the identification of the Summer Palace, Zheng Dafeng and Yan Exen stared at them and couldn't make a mistake. Just like before in Wukuei City, asking outsiders to fill in their hometown and resume is a kind of boring thing that seems to be superficial and easy to get confused. But in fact, it is a typical external looseness and internal tightness. And the more recorded outsiders, if there are more, the easier it is for Xianxia to verify each other. Once someone is found to have moved their hands and feet, deliberately concealing their identity and false resumes, then they have to deal with the twisted core who is now in charge of a prison. One can imagine the methods of a sewing man who can make Qin Pingon have a lingering fear. As soon as Qin Pingon appeared, a group of young martial artists, no more than 10, gathered on the side of the martial arts field. Wearing a blue shirt and long gown, he turned sideways and at the same time flipped one arm, slapped back, held down the face door of a sneak attack young man behind him, pressed it to the ground and slammed his head 3 times. Then his body turned floating, his hand grabbed a fiercely swept whip leg, his right hand raised his elbow high, and one fell suddenly, that is, a heart elbow hitting the boy's heart, and the latter slammed into the heart. On the ground, Qin Pingan's toe was picked again, and the boy rolled a dozen times in the air, limped to the ground, trying to get up several times to no avail. He vomited blood. The girl named Sun Yen had a knee bump, and Qin Pingan hit her waist heavily with a leg. Sun Yen flew out on the spot, collided with another woman Wu Fu and fell out together. In an instant 10 people surrounded and beat each other, and there was no need to say hello to each other. The cooperation was not unwieldy and they all fell to the ground in the end. Jiang Yun with a blue nose and swollen face sat on the ground, raised his head high and had a nosebleed. The tomboy back then, the big girl now, Yuan Zhaohua, sat on the ground and she slammed her fist on the ground. Su Gong in Mumming Alley rubbed his heart and grinned. Jiang Yun, Su Gong, Yuan Zhaohua. The 3 of them have the best qualifications and the fastest to learn boxing. With the gift of a brand new world, Jiang Yun has won martial arts 3 times, and Su Gong and Yuan Zhaohua have each won twice. In addition, many people have received a martial arts gift. In fact, this has a lot to do with Ning Yao's breakthrough, especially after she has truly secured her position as the #1 person in the world, coupled with the fact that Xianxia has received some kind of blessing from heaven and earth. It makes the Wufu who hides from the cold palace. Of course, these former children are indeed diligent in martial arts, and they are able to endure hardship, and they have never squandered their own talents and external opportunities. I just have to admit that this kind of martial arts that relies on the strongest in a certain realm is more hydrated than any other world, and it has a lot of water. If you are in the Howren world, which school can have nearly 10 people and have one martial arts so densely, what is it that does not open their own martial arts shop? Standing in place, Qin Pingan smiled and said, "If it's the kind of point-to-finish discussion and join hands for a long-distance trip, there is no big problem." Xiwu climbed high and couldn't come. The line of Wufu who is hiding in the Hanxing Palace really needs 20 to 30 years of fighting to truly share the worries of Feishing City. At that time there were 1 or 2 warriors in the remote travel realm, and it was very safe to travel outside and they didn't really need the guardian of the sword repair. If it was a premeditated sneak attack aside from Zheng Dafeng and the 2 boxing masters, then a sword repairer in the Golden Core realm who had been to the battlefield in Xianxia could completely kill through the cold palace with 1 flying sword. Qin Pingan moved from near to far, pulling up the young martial artists one by one. Except for women, of course, the hidden officials only need to stomp their feet lightly and they can stand up. Sun Yi in Yuhu Street, she has a younger sister named Sun Zhao, who left her hometown with a Jinjai, a female sword fairy named Song Pin in her early years. After she got up, she asked, "His Lord Hidden Officer, how is Sun Zhao now? Is there any shame?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "She is already a sword repairer in the sea-viewing realm." Sun Yen nodded and said, "Make do with it." Hidden in the cold palace, the people who taught boxing in history were the old mother by Lianshuang of Ning Mansion, the young hermit Qin Pingan, and Zheng Dafeng, a foreigner. In fact, Qin Pingan only occasionally gives advice. It is not a master in the strict sense, but the children who are hiding in the cold palace, who cares about this? Compare Master Zheng with the master hermit if there is nothing to do. Qin Pingan walked to the 2 martial artists of the golden stature and said with a smile, "Master Ma, Master Lu, if you can make a heavier shot in the future if you can. As for the medicinal materials that boil muscles and bones, 3 meals a day you can ask for more medicated food so you don't have to worry about the reimbursement of Quanfus line." Seeing the gentle look of the young hermit and the tone of discussion, the 2 were a little surprised and at the same time a little relaxed. Today, with the host of the Hermit speaking in person, I think it will be better to discuss it in the spring mansion in the future. Who doesn't know that the accountants of the Chuanfu family line in the matter of making money are so close to respecting the young hermit as the first ancestor? The pure martial artist who has been hiding from the Han Xing Palace has been in an embarrassing situation over the years. He is like a concubine on the hill of criminal officers. It is not very pleasing. In addition to money matters, he can only get in but not get out. It's not annoying, but it's not something worth boasting about. The Quan Mansion won't take the slightest, except that the two of them, the Master Jing Dafeng and the 3 teachers who teach boxing, Quan Mansion will give it every month. Salaries are a lot of money, and all the children need for martial arts training, boxing and bones are distributed in sufficient quantities. As much as they want to hide from the cold and travel palace, there is no difference. It's just a few trivial words and certain eyes and faces. No one is stupid, they can hear and see clearly. In addition, those who practice martial arts hiding in the cold palace, in this ascending city where swordsmanship is like a cloud, will inevitably feel that they are a dwarf, talking and doing things, and then they are bound to follow. Just like that Jiang Yun with the best martial arts qualifications, he will soon be a golden martial artist. He is already the mainstay of hiding in the cold palace in the future. If he goes out and meets the sword repairer of his peers on the road, how can he feel in his heart? Will there be no regrets? Although Jiang Yun still babbles all year round when he goes outside, but in fact the louder a person speaks, the more guilty his heart is. Qin Pingon held his fist and said goodbye. I won't delay your teaching. The woman Wu Fu asked, does Master Qin teach boxing for the children? If you call the other party a hidden official, it seems inappropriate. After all, the hidden official today is Ning Yao. Since the other party is a mountain-level martial artist, it shouldn't be an exaggeration to call a master, even senior. The pioneering school is the master and the one with higher fist is the teacher. The 2 martial artists from other villages are no better than the native swordsmen of the Great Wall of Jianqi. Although they have been teaching boxing here for many years, because they rarely go out and walk around, they have only a little understanding of the many unique customs of the Great Wall of Jianqi. Many rumors and deeds about this last hermit are actually not quite understandable. Just like a female martial artist surnamed Lu, she really wondered why Jiang Yun couldn't get around the 3 questions with Cao Ci every time they talked to Chen Yingguan. They were clearly defeated in 3 consecutive games, and they could still speak so happily. Even when it comes to questioning a fist with Yi Yufu, he almost never talks about how the young master punches fiercely. Instead, he only talks about being knocked down by Yi Yufu. Not only Jiang Yun but almost everyone is too happy. Qin Pingon shook his head and smiled. No. The burly man surnamed Ma cautiously asked. After Qin Zongshi returned to his hometown, did he ever ask Cao Ci again for boxing? Qin Pingon nodded and said, I had a questioning punch but I still lost. The man is not strange, it is strange to win Cao Ci. The woman couldn't help asking, dare to ask Master Qin what realm is Cao Ci now? Obviously she is an admirer of Cao Ci. Qin Pingon said, when I asked Cao Ci about the boxing he was returning to the real level. The woman's eyes were complicated, but she was cleverly hidden soon. Qin Pingon knew her thoughts, probably because he felt that a mountain-level martial artist would be a little overwhelmed to go and ask a fist at the end of his life, Cao Ci. It's just that Qin Pingon didn't explain anything. When the 2 golden martial artists began to teach boxing again, Qin Pingon just stopped for a moment on the edge of the martial arts field and soon left silently. For the 2 boxing masters waiting for the man in the blue shirt to leave, the mood at the moment can probably be regarded as relieved. The first 10 people in the hiding place all saw the young hermit give them a thumbs up before leaving. Walking out of the gate, Qin Pingon looked back at the plaque. This hideout palace that once belonged to the priest's line was indeed weird. Hide from the cold. Hide. It is a pity that even in the summer palace, there is no written record of the priest's line, as if all records were deliberately destroyed. Only in the blank space of the secret file that recorded the criminal officer's line, Qin Pingon saw a sentence similar to the endorsement. It was the handwriting of the former hermit Xiao Deng. It was crooked and easy to identify. The physical body of every pure martial artist is a pantheon full of incense. Sword of Coming Chapter 9:14. A line of Chuanfu. Qin Pingon took Xiaoma through the corridor and visited Gao Yeho. Gao Yeho stood at the door of the house to greet him, jokingly said, "How does it feel to visit my own site, isn't it good?" Today in Xianxia, who doesn't know that the government office that supports the hermit official Qin Pingon the most is not even the summer palace where the number of sword repairers is sparse, but this spring palace that intends to shake the sky. There was once a young sword repairman who was a thief stealing the couplet and couldn't make a couplet, and he directly released a sentence. Whenever I hear a sentence saying that the second shopkeeper is not, I'm sorry, I'll come to Chuanfu to do business in the future, just wait to be put on shoes. Qin Pingon moved a chair and sat down and said straightforwardly, God of wealth, you can't thank me first? Xiao Imo stood outside the door and he could see that the sun was very popular here. It was the monks here and it seemed that not many dared to greet the sun. Takano-ho wondered, where did you start talking about this? Qin Pingon tweeted, how about pretending to be confused with me? Takano-ho smiled and said, I still ask the hidden official to speak clearly. Qin Pingon shook his head, forget it, just treat it as if I was playing the piano to the cow. Takano-ho smiled and said, it's better to say it differently and show the blind to the blind, it's more accurate. Scolding others first scolding yourself was the unique secret of the summer palace. I scolded myself harshly first, what can you do with me? Qin Pingon looked around, the decoration of the house was so simple that it was almost shabby, and there was not even a plaque in the study room. Before walking along the way he glanced at the houses along the way. Only hands are familiar, gentlemen love money. These plaques are placed in the Chuanfu office, how strange it is to look at. In fact, Gao Yeho had already figured it out at this moment. Qin Pingon was talking about his sister Gao Yuqing, who followed the female sword fairy Li Kai to Luzhou in Beiju, and the Jianxiu who went with him was the nickname Little Hermit. Young Qinli. Is it a brother-in-law for yourself? If Qin Pingon hadn't mentioned this one today, Takano-ho would not think about it at all. As soon as Qin Li's sword was O Ming, it was the relic of a certain sword immortal in Luzhou in Beiju, so Qin Li went there. Sword practice while practicing is a good arrangement for the summer palace. Moreover, my sister was in her hometown and had a very good impression of that Pang Yuanji. She had been a follower for several years and had a posture of not marrying Pang Yuanji, which made Gao Yeho worry. At the time of the Great Wall of Jianqi, Gao Yeho, who was born in a poor alley, had a good relationship with Pang Yuanji, but a fool could see that Pang Yuanji didn't care about the love of men and women, so the sisters' unrequited love was of little significance. It is difficult for both sides to achieve a positive result. Therefore, if it can happen, the younger sister Gao Yuqing and Qin Li can be married in that foreign land, and the younger sister will be able to take care of them. Of course, Gao Yeho would like to thank Qin Pinyin. Since Qin Li has the nickname of the little hidden official, and he has great admiration for Qin Pinyin, if it is about something, Qin Li can really follow Qin Pingon, and it is not bad to think about it. Otherwise, Howren is a world of colorful flowers. Qin Li's aptitude for practicing swords is too good, and the boy's skin is extremely brilliant at the time. If you don't pay attention, you will be the second of the rice sword fairy. When Gao Yeho thought of this, he was a little worried. He stopped calling any hidden officials and called his name directly, Qin Pinyin. If Qin Li doesn't like Yuqing himself is wishful thinking and can't blame anyone, but if it's Qin Li Mingming likes Yuqing, but he dared to change his mind and let him down. Then I will ask you to settle this account. Of course, Qin Li will definitely not be able to escape. Gao Yihe's love for that sister was once known to everyone on the Great Wall of Jianqi. The 3 times I took the initiative to ask the sword with others, it was because Gao Yuqing was dazzled on the road. 2 people of the same age, one drunkard and bachelor, did not end well for the 3 of them. In other words, if the younger sister and Qin Li were in front of him, Takano-ho would also want to sap Qin Li. Qin Pingon smiled and said, although it is unreasonable to ask me to settle accounts, I have confidence in Qin Li's conduct and Gao Yuqing's vision. Takano-ho felt a little more comfortable. Unwilling to go in circles with Qin Pingon, Gao Yeho asked directly, is it the account book check? According to the rule, the hidden official and 1 line of sword repairs have this power. They are responsible for monitoring the summer palace in Xianxia. Even Qishou and Gao Yu can check them, not to mention a few account books. This is not right. Qin Pingon smiled and said, it must be your Chuanfu family line, and take the initiative to send the account books to the summer palace on schedule. Takano-ho shook his head and said, there is no such rule. Qin Pingon leaned on the back of his chair, shook his blue shirt and long gown and raised Erlang's legs. Regulations, traditions not always have a good start. Takano-ho still shook his head and said, Don't think about it, I won't agree to this matter. Unless the Hermit Lord convenes a meeting in the Patriarch's Hall, we pass this matter and our Chuanfu will follow the routine. I thought that even if the talks ended here, even if the two sides broke down, Gao Yeho was even prepared for the worst. The big deal is Qin Pingon made a big fuss in Chuanfu. Anyway, it was not that Qishou had not been cut down by Ning Yao, who was temporarily leading the hermit. He, the leader of the Spring Mansion, was cut down by a real hermit and it seemed to be nothing. Never thought that Qin Pingon gave a hum. Brother Gao has become more calm. In this way Takano Ho was playing drums in his heart, and it was better to be harassed by Qin Pingon than to be overcast by this guy. Gao Yeho was in a mixed mood at the moment, and suddenly he missed the days of the Abbot Ning Yao's summer residence. Don't worry about it, there is no circumstance and it's business, refreshing and refreshing. Gao Yeho curiously asked, is there really nothing serious about coming here today? Qin Pingon smiled and said, I really didn't. I just asked Brother Gao to tell the old story. Why, I think we have no friendship and think that I have been a high-ranking Brother Gao who became a high-ranking official. Qin Pingon lowered his head and took out something from his sleeve, and gently tossed it to Gao Yeho, even if it is a gift for the establishment of Chuanfu. Gao Yeho held it in his hand. It was a small piece of wood made of old sandalwood. The style was quite elegant and weird. It had a curved ruler shape with inscriptions and signatures on it. It should be an old object, but Gao Yeho couldn't guess what it was for. The 4-character inscription, look up, follow the rules, and there is a line of slightly smaller handwriting below. It can be said that the rules can be called a national scholar, and it is reasonable to be a good law. Qin Pingon smiled and asked, do you know what it is for? Takano Ho said in a huff, don't sell off, just say it. Qin Pingon said, it's a seal. It's not worth the money. You may not be able to sell half a snowflake on the mountain, but I have treasured it for many years. I gave it to you. You can eat ashes. Don't give it away. Takano Ho gently put the seal on the table, nodded and said, I will cherish it at the first sight. Gao Yeho wondered, is this going away? Qin Pingon said, go to the conference hall of your spring mansion to see will it be out of compliance? Gao Yeho shook his head and smiled and said, what's the matter? You really need to worry about it. The entire Chuanfu government office was moved by the hidden official. You can just walk around except for the treasury and bookroom. There used to be 4 private residences on the upside-down mountain, namely Chunwanzai, Maihuanzi, Sar Mansion and Shuijing Palace. Lu Yuzhou, Liu's son of Lu Kaishan, once offered to give the entire mansion to the Great Wall of Jianqi. The Great Wall of Jianqi was indeed emptied by the Great Wall of Jianqi. Feixincheng Jianqiu very much loved this friendship. The Shuijing Palace, belonging to the Yulong sect, is the only private house that is not related to the Great Wall of Jianqi. As for the sword immortal Xiao Yanyan's Chunban's High and Mrs. Yanyan's Plum Blossom Courtyard, because they are both set up with restricted formations, one can be folded into a palm-shaped pocket mansion, and the other can be uprooted. They both arrived in the city that year and eventually followed Feixincheng came to the colorful world together. Mrs. Yanyan was able to become Lu Ji's maid, and received a refuge with this voting certificate. Now she is also a member of the Ancestor Hall of the Dragon Elephant Sword Sect, a monk Howren. If she wants to trouble her, she has to take a good look at it and will it be deployed and on the road inexplicably. And all this was dominated by the hermit official Qin Pingon. Chunban's High and Yifeng Jianfeng were allocated to Chuanfu. Gao Yeho put aside the affairs at hand, personally led the way, and led Qin Pingan and Xiao Mo to the lobby of the Spring Banner Studio in the past years. In fact, Qin Pingan's understanding of the many walls and secret rooms of Chunban's High in the past is probably no less than that of Gao Yu. During the period, I passed by the account rooms with rich ink fragrance. Most of them were young monks who were curious about the young hermit. Many of them came from the Yen family and the Nalan family. Among them there were women holding fans and standing leaning against the door seeing the blue shirt. But didn't say hello as if satisfied with seeing one side, she held a folding fan close together, and before sitting down on the embroidered stool, she gently brushed the roundness to avoid folds in her dress. The woman suddenly looked back and smiled at the door. She was 1 generation lower than Nalan Saihuan, who was in charge of the house in the past. According to the genealogy, she is the aunt of Nalan Yutsai. It's a pity that the incomprehensible blue shirt man outside the house walked quickly across the corridor outside the door without squinting his eyes. Qin Pingon asked. In that plum garden, do you want to gift the spring mansion to the next female sword repairman in the Jade Pure realm? Gao Yeho nodded and said, there is this plan. At present it seems that Luo Zhini, who is a hidden official line, is the most likely. Between Feishing City and the 8 Hills, the boundary has been delineated for the construction of Xianxian's private house in the future. For example, the 3 brothers in Shizhou paid their own money and bought a piece of land, intending to rebuild a dustpan. It's just that, like Chongyukshan Pavilion, Dingyun Pavilion, Wanheju Jia's Hanku etc., these private homes of Zhenxian with their own mysteries are difficult to rebuild. If there is no more, it can only be no more. Qin Pingon came to the familiar lobby, stopped for a moment and crossed the threshold. Takano Ho sat at the threshold with his back to the courtyard and facing the chairs. He took out a pot of wine from his sleeve and asked, drink or not? Qin Pingon leaned on a pillar with his arms around his chest, looked at the 2 rows of chairs and shook his head. Miyu Sunjian, Gao Kue Yen Ming Nailand Saihuan. Xia Songhua Li Kai Kuxia Yuan Qingshu Xieji Song Pin Pu He Xiao Yunyan. Plus the last new hermit who was present. At that time rushed to the Downfall Mountain, and a total of 14 sword repairmen were present. Looking back now, it turns out that most of the sword repairs are from other villages. Qin Pingon moved and chose to sit on a chair near the door. It was the position of Xiao Jianxian, the owner of Chunban's Hai, who was somewhat responsible for closing the door and hitting the dog. Qin Pingon smelled the mellow wine scent from the door and couldn't help turning his head and asking, what wine? It's very fragrant. Takano Ho smiled and said, I heard that it is a genuine Qingshan wine. I asked someone to secretly buy a jar and distribute a few pots by myself. The price is really expensive. I'm worried that I can drink it all at once, but I buy it. When I was drinking, I made an agreement with the restaurant and didn't let them publicize it to the outside world. I don't know whether the wine is true or not. Anyway, after I tasted it, I think it's worth the price. Qin Pingon smiled and said, I haven't drunk the drinks before, so I don't want to make a rash judgment, but for the price, Brother Gao is mostly taken as a bully and killed a pig. Takano Ho smiled. Looking at the chairs on the opposite side, Qin Pingon remained silent for a long time, and finally said, Gao Yeho, we must let Fei Xingcheng remain Fei Xingcheng. Takano Ho joked. A guy from the awe-inspiring world, isn't it a bit weird to say such things? Qin Pingon raised his right hand, condensing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into a ball, using a strand of pure infuriating energy as the rope, raised it high and then gently pushed the ball with his left hand. Then the ball swayed. Qin Pingon watched the ball sway in 2 directions again and said to himself, my senior brother Cui Yang, who was the husband of Daoist's son today, I heard that he still song he, the prince, has seen the beginning and end of 2 things. One is a border prefecture and the other is located in Jiangyi. There has also been a scandal. The former's handling skills were extremely arrogant, and the people's grievances were boiling. Regarding what the people didn't raise, it seemed that nothing happened. The officials in the Jiangyi region handled it very beautiful. Indeed, there was no concealment, secret papers, official documents, diaries, etc. They were dealt with immediately. See, there is no leaking, no cover, no pressure from beginning to end. Everything seems to be exposed to the public as if everything is clear. In fact, here the local government has reached a tacit agreement with it, and then it is settled under the table. Even if the criminal department of the Dali court investigates it, it seems that there is nothing wrong to settle the account after the fall, because there is no one who embezzles or accepts bribes. There is no dereliction of duty, and as far as the people of a county are concerned, the people's sentiments are very good. They only think that the government has handled them properly, vigorously, and they are very happy. But the world can't contain the fire. As long as things are exposed, they will only get worse and want the situation. To prevent it from getting out of hand, you must use a larger wrist to press it down, and it must be better covered. Gao Yeho asked, I am worried about the future of Ascension City. The working style of many swordsmen will change from one extreme to another, and they will gradually become an official in the great land of Jiangyi. They are skilled, drip-proof and practice swordsmanship. Doing things for officials. More and more sophisticated and sleek? Don't worry about me. Qin Pingon said blithely, because it will definitely happen. Takano Ho suddenly became dumb. Qin Pingon broke the ball and slowly said, sword repair in the lower 5 realms, see sword repair in the middle 5 realms, sword repair in the middle 5th realm, see sword repairs in the upper 5 realm, Yupu fairy sword repair in the two realms. I saw the sword repair in the ascending realm. Of course there are others who are not sword repairers, but I saw sword repairs. By the time the 3 government offices in the Summer Palace, the sword repairers will have official status, and they are becoming more and more hierarchical. Walking on the street, they dare to call Dong Sanging and Chen Shi the same names as before. Directly call you Gaoyu and Qishou? The life and death enemy of a Taoist person is himself, forming a golden pill, nurturing the nascent soul, facing the inner demon and waiting for the upper 5 realms to return to nature and seek truth. It is a difficult journey. The same is true for the enemies of Xianxia. But don't worry too much about this kind of thing. Since you can't avoid it, prepare early. The situation in Feixing City is actually very good now. Back then the two of them had a relatively rough deduction in private. I was relatively pessimistic at the time, and I had to be a bit optimistic about Saramiao Jianxian. Not to mention the rapid development of Feixing City over the years, and its ability to be orderly has far exceeded the expectations of Shoumiao Jianxian. This shows that how well are Qishou and Gao Yeho doing. Qin Pingon stood up and said with a smile, "There is a lot to do, but there is a long way to go." Takano Ho did not get up. He still sat on the threshold and said, "The academy is about to be established in Feixing City. I am willing to mix up with outsiders, so if you have ideas, I have heard it, you can ventilate with the summer residents and wait until the next time the ancestral hall is discussed. The suggestion is to be dismissed and you don't need to be a villain." Qin Pingon shook his head and said, "In fact, I don't have any ideas. Qishou has no small selfish intentions and he has vision and mind. If a person has a long-term perspective, it is not easy to rush for quick success. Ambitious and ambitious are a pair of synonyms." Takano Ho seemed to have no intention of letting Qin Pingon go and asked, "About the name of the academy as well as those plaques and couplets, who are you going to write?" Qin Pingon had to sit back in his chair. Among the Fuyao survivors in the north, there is no shortage of writers and scholars who are full of poems and books. The ink in my stomach has long been given to 2 copies. Gao Yeho was born at the bottom of the city. He has depended on his sister since he was a child. He has played a lot of part-time jobs and earned everything. For the first time in his life he went to Taixiang Street. He became a sword repairman and got the old sword Zanolin after he went to the battlefield, burning Weiss favor and then being recruited by the Nalin family as a family swordsman. After a few years, Takano Ho took advantage of the opportunity to become the Nalin family's quick son-in-law, married a virtuous woman of the same age. She was also a Jianxiu. Only the female appearance and sword training aptitude are very common. In fact, Nalin Xiaowei first intentionally let Gao Yeho marry another one, but Gao Yeho did not agree. Feixingcheng and the 4 surrounding cities of the vassal have established a school, and preparations for the construction of a college are currently underway. The children's reading and literacy, except for the book Shu Wenjie, which was highly recommended by the Summer Palace, most of the text comes from the stone tablets scattered in the streets and alleys in Feixing City. Books. Those ancient steles that were once ignored by anyone have now been collected one by one and moved to several schools, like a forest of small steles. Most of the writings on the stone tablet are soaked and stripped, faintly discernible, either in line or in regular script. The characters are strong and the morality is considerable. It is completely different from the style of the later generations. Few rocks, ancient characters full of moss. Who would read it if it weren't for a visitor? In addition to learning words from the master, Mengtong also has 2 subjects of arithmetic and geography. The children all have to learn to take the exam. The latter is compiled by the Summer Palace and the criminal officer in a joint effort to introduce the colorful mountains and rivers. Rivers, local products. As for the Shuowenjiezi, the editor was the Master Su, who was hailed as the sage of Zhaoling characters by Hauran. In addition, the selection of the classics of the 3 religions and the Summer Palace is extremely cautious. For example, there is only 1 book of rites in Confucian books, as well as a separate piece of encourage learning. It is not because the old scholar is a hermit, and the Summer Palace has widely promoted the classics of Wenxing. Taoism is the Huang Ting Jing, and Buddhism is the Srangama Sutra. In fact, in the final analysis, all schools have only one purpose: to ensure that the children in Feixingcheng can read and hyphenate. You don't need to know everything, but you can't know everything. Qin Pingon asked casually, "How often does the school skip classes?" Gao Yeho had a headache. It's too much, why not too much? The school has to arrange a few teachers to block the roads in those specific streets and alleys, and catch them one by one, catch the chickens and then run and catch them. I'm fighting there every day. It's already a good time. At the beginning, almost every day in the school was empty, and it didn't work to persuade me. I just didn't want to study from children to their parents. I seem to think that this is a shameful thing. The Zhou Xian is discussing this issue. I almost couldn't help it. I asked whether to pay for school or not. If a child gives a few cents a day, of course Chuanfu will pay. I was only rejected by Qishou and persuaded me not to say anything. Qin Pingon shook his head. Qishou is right, but you can't open this hole. When Gao Yeho chatted about this, he talked a lot, stopped drinking, smiled and said, after 2 or 3 years the children who are willing to take the initiative to go to school finally have a little more. And the result is that there will be more children who are willing to go to school. New trouble, children from places like Yuhu Street, Taishang Street, and that some classmates in the poor streets and alleys fight when they disagree. They like to hug each other and fight each other. They feel that studying is too boring, but they should fight harder. It is often the teacher who still cares about their. The dog jumped, so in the past few years I went to the school to be a teacher and they complained and complained. The daily mantra just can't be taught. Apart from making troubles in the school, they are bound by hands and feet. Every day before school is over, the 2 groups of people make an appointment. The teachers don't know how to manage and they are not easy to manage. When the next day was in class, all of them had bruised noses and swollen faces. The teachers were angry and funny. Speaking of this, I really want to thank Guizhujio. She took the lead and laid down a few rules for the children. It can be regarded as 3 chapters. If the 2 groups want to resolve the grievances between the rivers and lakes, first, both parties must use their bare hands and secondly, learn at home. Those who have practiced martial arts cannot fight off the field. They can only be the high-ranking general who is responsible for dispatching troops and generals. Third, before starting you must put your school bags in the care of 1 or 2 people. No one can take care of them. School bags are used as weapons. Whoever dares to break the books in it, don't blame the selfless and polite officers of the inspectors she personally appointed. Finally, the rivers and lakes are grieving against the rivers and lakes. No one in the school can do anything or else just do things. Don't pay attention to it, it can't be regarded as a real old world. Qin Pingon held back a smile. Bamboo wine reached Luapa Mountain and he didn't tell me this. Gao Yeho suddenly asked, do you have a disciple named Pei Qian? Qin Pingon nodded and said, what's wrong? Gao Yeho smiled and said, our child King Guizhujio did not become the leader of the martial arts. She said that she has a senior sister named Pei Qian, who is tall, powerful and capable of fists, so she herself is just a dog-headed sergeant. Qin Pingon couldn't help but tolerate his laughter. It's not without reason that Pei Qian has nothing to do with Guizhujio's side. Takano Ho Tsk said in amazement. Can you imagine that afterwards, there were more than 100 schoolchildren at every turn, and they arrived at the agreed battlefield, divided into 2 groups, the main battlefield swarmed, and there were all kinds of roundabouts and detours. Sneak attacks are all used military techniques. Especially when it snows in winter, it is a lively school. The 4 schools in the city are all coming to Xianxia to gather, and hundreds of children are on the side of Taishang Street. They were crowded together and many of them were wearing open-crotch trousers. They had snowball fights together. From time to time the gates of the city would open, and an ambush soldier would be shot out of a certain mansion. Qin Pingon asked, are there any who secretly wrapped snow and hit people with rocks? Takano Ho was speechless really. Takano Ho squinted his eyes and said, some little rascals before a fight they like to roll their sleeves and pants slowly and learn from someone. It's pretty decent. Qin Pingon laughed. An old hidden official in the summer palace, of wealth in the family of Chuanfu. Talking about children fighting in groups, they can even talk with eyebrows and laughter. Qin Pingon left Quan Mansion and came to Taishang Street. It was already the time when the sun was setting. He raised his eyes and sent flying birds away. Xianxia is a city without walls. Because it is not needed. Bring Xiao Mo to the door of a mansion. Qin Mansion on Taishang Street. There will be a round of rising sun here, and soon the whole colorful world will be looked at. Because the real owner of this mansion is the former Qin Shi. In the Great Wall of Jianqi, there have been constant quarrels about the strength of the small group of peak sword immortals, especially Dong Sanging, Shao Dang, Qin Shi and Qi Tingji. The specific ranks of the four are divided. Of course, Qin Pingon is also very curious, so once the boss sword fairy was a guest at the summer palace, he asked this question. The boss sword fairy had always not mixed with such rankings, probably because he felt that the new hermit had no credit and hard work. I made an exception and gave an answer that is not the answer. Dong Sanjing's killer power is the greatest, Xiaoxing's natal flying sword is the best, the swordsmanship is the highest, Qi Tingji's swordsmanship is the highest, Qin Zai's kendo attainments are the highest, and Dong Sanging was injured in his youth too heavy, Xiao Yan loses in uncertainty, Qi Tingji loses in impureness, Qin Shi loses in relatively weak body and too high heart. Qin Ji looks like a teenager. Before Qin Ping's salute, Qin Ji waved his hand and said, "Forget it," so that both sides are not awkward. The maid clasped her fist and said, "Qin Hui, I have seen Lord Hidden Officer." Qin Pingon smiled and clasped his fists in return. "Congratulations, Miss Qin, who has entered the Jade Realm." If it weren't for Qin Hu's current identity and state to be leaked, the plum garden outside Feixiangcheng would already belong to her Sword Immortal's private house. 2 sit and 2 stops inside the house. Qin Pingon smiled and introduced, unfamiliar, the Daoist name Shizhu. Just call him Xiaoma. It is an ascending sword repairman from the wild world, who has been sleeping in the bright moon and bright color for many years, and asked Yuanxiang about the sword. I have cut down on Yang Ji and Zhu Wei. The implication is that the stranger is just a pure sword repairman, and he has no grudges with the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Rao is Qin Huideo's tenacious heart, and at this moment he is also shocked with a face that cannot be concealed. That is, the young hermit said it, otherwise she would just be listening to a joke. An ancient sword repairman who lived to a long age? Looking at Yuanxiang with Long Jun, they are all the same generation? Xiao Mo said, Xiao Mo has seen old sword Qin Chen. Qin Ji was equally surprised and stood up and clasped his fists. Sword Qi Great Wall, Jian Xiu Qin Shi, it's fortunate to see him. Qin Pingon followed Qin Ji and got up and took a seat. Qin Ji asked, "Do you want me to help you think of a way to let you go to the Patriarch Hall to discuss matters?" Qin Pingon shook his head and said, "Forget it this time." Qin Ji didn't force it and asked with a smile, "No wine?" Qin Pingon said in a hurry, "It's too hasty. Next time I go back here I will definitely have a drink." Qin Ji disapproved of him and said, "Hurry? What is it? It's not easy for Ning Yao to talk about this kind of thing. She's a woman. I'm surprised your kid is not too courageous. Why only meet this? It's so boring. Besides, even if you don't serve wine, you won't be able to cook mature rice with raw rice." Qin Pingon was embarrassed, but the other party was an elder after all, and it was hard to say anything. Qin Ji shook his head but didn't say much. He relied on the old and sold old language. Too much was easily annoying. He just asked Qin Pingyan about Xianxia's current situation. After hearing Xianxia's general travel process, Qin Ji was obviously not quite right. Satisfied, gave an evaluation of stepping on the watermelon rind. I asked Dong Huafu, Yen Zhuo, Qin Li, and Gao Yuqing about the practice of these 2 generations of young people after they left their hometown, but Qin Ji was quite satisfied. Qin Ji asked, "How about Qi Tingji's Dragon Elephant Sword sect?" Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Accepting more than a dozen young swordsmen as disciples, Sect Master Qi is now in the wild world and is responsible for garrisoning a ferry. Thank him." Qin Ji laughed at himself. Sure enough, people will change. Qin Ji suddenly asked, "Do you think it is appropriate for Qi Shou to be the lord of the city?" Qin Pingon said, "You can watch for a few more years. After all, after Qi Shou has entered the Fairyland, it is actually not appropriate, but Qi Shou has the final say." Qin Ji nodded, agreeing with the young hidden official's statement. Perhaps today's Feixiangcheng Jianxiu is not clear yet. The 2 people who most hope that Qi Shou can be the city lord and be good are the 2 in the house at this moment. Qin Pingon hoped that Qi Shou could sit firmly on one of the temporarily hanging seats. As long as Qi Shou could truly convince the crowd, then Ning Yao would not have to be distracted. Qin Ji is not very happy to be some city lord himself, but now he is more mindful, and he still has to see if he can go further than the cultivation realm of the previous life. However, Qin Ji was the first city lord, who had been personally arranged by the eldest sword immortal. The only people who knew about this were the young hermits except Qin Ji himself. Qin Ji was really afraid that Qin Pingon was not righteous. In order to make Ning Yao more relaxed, one day he was at the Patriarch Hall and moved out this decree in public. Qin Ji asked again, Is there a quota for the enshrinement and guest of Feishing City in the future? Qin Pingon thought for a while. Personal suggestion, the best number should not exceed 30% of Zhu Xian. Qin Ji asked, Deng Liang will leave Feishing City in the future and the Judu Mountain Xia sect created by him. Do we need to exchange courtesy and sang in Feishing City and arrange a chief worship? Qin Pingon shook his head. You don't need to stare, the intention is too obvious. It will become a potential thread with hidden dangers. Once the branches and leaves are scattered, it is the root of the split between Feishing Cheng and Deng Liang's next sect. Qin Ji smiled and said, I think it's better to have obvious intentions so as to save people's hearts. Feishing City doesn't have the idle time to calm people's hearts. There are some problems, but the lack of beating is used to it. Qin Pingon smiled and said, Anyway, it's not an imminent thing, so we will discuss it again? Qin Ji nodded and said, Yes. After Qin Pingon and Xiao Imo left, Qin Ji continued to read. Qin Hui stood by, silently. She grew up in the Qin mansion since she was a child. She is not only a dead man but also an assassin. Qin Ji asked, How is it? Qin Hui replied respectfully, If a slave and maid antagonizes him, there is no chance of winning. Qin Ji Xiao asked, What if it's a sneak attack on the battlefield or a well-prepared assassination? Qin Hui shook his head and said, Most slaves are still going to die. Qin Ji smiled and said, Do you know what a real genius is? There are two types. One is Ningyao, which is easily higher than the two realms of Qishou and Gaoyu, and the other is Qin Pingon. Firen and Shouchen is like this. As long as he fights with others in the same environment, he can be invincible. It is rare for Qin Hui to take the initiative to ask and cautiously said, Master, how many 14-level monks can be accommodated in a colorful world? Qin Ji flipped the pages of the book lightly and smiled and said, There can be many 14 realms or there can be only one. It depends on the attitude of the world's number one person. In the night, a small alley, a small house, dimly lit as the second in command of criminals, she has lived here all these years. Her identity is still a mystery, but no one dared to ask the roots. After all, as the principal of the Wufu line of hiding in the cold palace, she also manages a prison, and her status have surpassed the old deaf children of the year. Today, a rare guest came to the door. Nian Exen opened the courtyard door, and brought Qin Ping'an and a young monk with a yellow hat and blue shoes into the main house. Qin Pingon took out the old tobacco rod and soon began to vomit. Nian Exen frowned and asked, What's the matter? Originally thought that the man in front of him should be a Jade Pure Realm swordsman now, plus the return to true level of the boundary Wufu. Qin Pingon explained, It's not a small price to go to the barren world and it's a lot of downfall. Twisted Core nodded without asking. There was a knock on the door. Xiao Imo went to open the door, and saw a rickety man with a hip flask in one hand and sauce wrapped in oil paper in the other. Xiao Imo immediately smiled because he recognized the identity of the other party. Said, Luapa Mountain enshrines a stranger, meet Mr. Zheng. Mr. Zheng just called me Xiaomo. The man looked embarrassed and said, How do you feel like being raped in bed? Nian Exen turned her head and looked at the entrance to the courtyard. She said with a black face and solemnly, Zheng Dafeng, please be careful when you speak to me. Zheng Dafeng smiled brightly and nodded to Xiao Imo. Since he is from his own family, there is no need for polite greetings. He strode into the yard and said solemnly, Shan, I must explain it. Actually, I don't come here often. I am not familiar with the Nianxin girl. After taking his seat, Zheng Dafeng looked at the mountain owner who was smoking a dry cigarette, and asked with a smile, When did you develop the habit? Qin Pingon smiled and said, What happened after I went to the Yang family pharmacy? Zheng Dafeng put down the hip flask and oil paper bag, raised his palm and shook his head saying, The way is far worse. Turning his head to look at Xiao Imo, Zheng Dafeng asked sincerely, Xiao Imo, our brothers have not seen each other for many years. Can't we drink? Qin Pingon originally wanted to tease a few words, but he thought about it again and his face turned weird, so he resisted the words that came to his lips. Xiao Imo immediately got up, picked up the jug, poured a bowl of wine for Zheng Dafeng and himself, smiled and said, It's really been a long absence. Because Xiao Imo was at the door just now and at a glance he recognized Zheng Dafeng's dual identities. In addition to being the gatekeeper of Luapa Mountain, he was also the gatekeeper of a certain place a long time ago. However, the Zheng Dafeng at that time was handsome and heroic with a big frost armor on his body. Xing Dafeng stepped on the bench with one foot and asked, "Have you been to the hiding palace?" Qin Pingon nodded. "It's not bad." Xing Dafeng said, "Yes, it's not bad, but it's only good. It's very troublesome. These children are like being pressed by the great wall of sword qi, and their fist has never really risen. Even the best qualified Jiang, even he will feel like a dwarf facing Xianxia. This kind of idea will remain an invisible bottleneck if it is not dispelled for a day. The most troublesome thing is that if there is such a bottleneck, it will not delay the breakthrough. This is difficult to make sense. Now I, the boxing master, can't hold their heads and ask the sword repairers of the same age who are above the top to fight for their lives." In fact, it was Qin Pingon. If he was a martial artist born and bred on the Great Wall of Sword Qi and had never met Tui Ching, had never practiced in a bamboo tower, he would be insurmountable. But during the daytime at the hiding palace, Qin Pingon was really satisfied with the young martial artists. It was a heartfelt approval. To a large extent, from Jiang Yun and Yuan Zhaohu's bodies, Qin Pingon seemed to have seen himself. It's like an elder who is already high enough to see a junior who can only be considered as a qualified person. Although the latter has not spoken bravely, but in a pair of eyes, it seems that he has been chanting a word repeatedly. "I can definitely become a sword fairy, right?" Qin Pingon felt that such words were really beautiful and moving. Xing Dafeng sipped his wine, shivered immediately, sighed and slowly said, "If you stay in Haoren except Jiang Yun, you might get a martial arts gift by chance, and everyone else don't think about it." Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Anyway, it's not in the Haoren world. When Jiang Yun is in the Golden State, you will spend more time thinking about it and the foundation will be very good." Xing Dafeng said, "Why don't you find a sword repairing scene, come to the infighting between Jian Repair and Pure Wufu?" The two sides guarded each other and fought a solid battle. Regardless of whether they win or lose, they are both against Jiang Yun. Good thing. I'm a boxing master who only receives a monthly salary. I can't even count as a sesame officer. I don't have that great ability. Let the steward of the 2 hills of the hermit or criminal officer control the fire and select them. Not only is the state of the sword repaired, but also has requirements for his xinxing. Otherwise, for this kind of thing, one side asks the fist and the other asks the sword. Those baby bumps in the ascending city, one is impatient and you have to ignore it. Once you talk to Jiang Yun and the other's life and death face each other, not to mention hurting feelings, I am afraid that someone will be injured, especially the root of the road, and even more afraid that it will affect the whole body and break the delicate balance of the 3 hills of Feishing City." Qin Pingon nodded. "It's really not suitable for you to come forward and make this happen." Xing Dafeng laughed and said, "This is called Jiang Shangzhen looking in the mirror. The reputation of our chief show will surely spread to Qingming world when we open the door next time." Qin Pingon laughed and thought about it for a while. "Find someone to discuss this matter, I'll take care of it, but you have to be ready to fight." Xing Dafeng nodded. "Girl Nianxin, I'm still idle when I'm idle. Don't you drink a couple of sips with brother Dafeng?" Twisted Core squinted and sneered. Xing Dafeng took a sip of the wine and said with a faint look in his eyes, "If you don't drink it, don't drink it. What is Dafeng doing?" Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment and still asked, "Can you draw a half-catty Jinchi talisman, or can it be used on the children in the hiding palace?" Xing Dafeng nodded and said, "If you can paint, you can also use it." Qin Pingon was a little puzzled. Before, he thought there were taboos here and there were some exquisites such as the prohibition of teacher transmission. Xing Dafeng smiled and said, "According to my master's statement, for no reason, why is it for nothing? Furthermore, my senior brother was scolded in the backyard of the drugstore, and it was rare to be scolded by the master. Didn't Li Er just want to be a good person at that time? If it wasn't for the kid Zhou Xian who bought the golden carp and the Dragon King basket first, Li Er got the master's reminder at that time and the later Luopa Mountain? The second treasurer of the Great Wall of Jianqi and the last hidden official? I see. The so-called double cultivation of blessing and wisdom in Buddhism is both the easiest thing and the most difficult thing." Xing Dafeng put down the wine bowl, hugged the back of his head with both hands, burped alcohol and said with a smile, "But since you have spoken, I will use the 2 talisman. In fact, he is a martial artist at the top of the mountain. It's just that on the side of the hiding palace he has been boasting that he is a great master of the Eclosion realm who travels far and wide. Being dismissed by the children is really what Xing Dafeng asked for." After becoming a mountain state, Xing Dafeng began to practice boxing deliberately and slack off. He was indeed lazy. And it's still lazy. Because once he became the first stop martial artist in Wuxia world, Xing Dafeng couldn't help but slacken his efforts. I am far from the storm and the storm may not be far from me. Xing Dafeng feels that the current stable life is very good. Never tidy up the table and chopsticks, only wipe the stools, the most diligent on behalf of the shopkeeper. Is my brother Dafeng the one who sent the ant? Wrong, it is my Dafeng brother's unfinished daughter-in-laws looking for it, but they haven't been able to find their husband. Xing Dafeng asked, on the side of Luopa Mountain, who is looking at the gate now? Xiamili helped to keep the door for the longest time. After patrolling the mountains every day I went to sit at the door. But now I am a Taoist named Nianjing who is taking care of the door. He has just arrived in the town for a few days. True Taoist and fake Taoist? It's really hard to tell. According to the current statement, of course, it is a false Taoist who has no salvation, but if you follow the old almanac you can be regarded as a true Taoist. Xing Dafeng nodded. I don't think much about it. Qin Pingon smiled and asked, I didn't even think about finding a wife here? Xing Dafeng smiled and said, I am not the little gangsters. Every day I yell, I can't enter the summer palace, so I'll marry a female sword repairer with a hidden official line. I have been away from home for many years and I don't want anything in the town. I just miss the meat buns from Madame Mao's family. They are big enough. Of course there are also Huang Erniang's drinks and the bowls are not small. Well, it is Hu Feng's grandpa, that happy event shop. By the way, do you know that Huang Erniang's baby bump? Qin Pingon nodded and said, I don't know much. I only heard that he was a young talent, the seed of reading. Later he went to the school opened by the Qin family in Long Wuxia to continue his studies. That's it. Otherwise, Huang Erniang's dead ghost husband is named Bai, and her son is called Bai Shang. Qin Pingon asked, it's another name for Autumn, one of the white merchants? Xing Dafeng smiled and said, otherwise. And that Hu Feng, if I remember correctly, you are the same age as you, the one who often went to Laozishan with Dong Shuijing to pick up broken pieces of porcelain. How should you both meet each other? Qin Pingon nodded and said, I have seen it many times, but I have never spoken to Hu Feng. Xing Dafeng revealed the secret again. Hu Feng's surname is Hu and his grandfather's surname is Chai. Don't you think it is strange? Qin Pingon angrily smiled and said, how do I know that Hu Feng's grandfather's surname is Chai Bu and Hu? When he was a child, Qin Pingon didn't dare to approach the wedding shop, and the old man who walked along the streets to do the sewing business never walked through Mud Bottle Alley. Xing Dafeng rolled his eyes, shook his head and asked, apart from Laozishan, what else? Qin Pingon was silent. Set very grave. In fact, there were only a few places where children in small towns often visited. Enjoy the coolness under the old locust tree, listen to stories, fish and swim on the stone arch bridge and the back of the green cow. Go to Laosi Mountain to pick up broken pieces of porcelain according to your preference. Go to the fairy tomb to put paper kites and play the house. Qin Pingan's heartstrings tightened instantly. Played every family. Xing Dafeng shook his wine bowl. Zozi has been to Liju Cave Sky. If I remember correctly, it was a stall at Xinghua Lane. Later there was also an ant with a heart higher than the sky and thinner than paper, that is so. The younger sister is now, and I actually went to the Liju Cave. Since half of the marriage book was taken by Lu Qi to the poetry of the Qingming world, where did the red threads on her hand come from? This thing. Anyone can refine it? Even if it is Mr. Sanshan Jiuho, his old man's Taoism is enough to reach the sky and he can't refine it. So many red threads, how did she come from Lao Chai? I asked for it. It is said that the second shopkeeper sits in Zhuang Wudi, and the young hidden official counts as an all-out plan. If you want me to see, it's really not very good. Qin Pingon smiled and said, you are old, you have the final say. A picture of the long river of time about the town. Knowing that Brother Cui Yang must have moved his hands and feet, and deliberately deleted a lot of inside information. But Qin Pingon never expected that so much truth would be erased. Xing Dafeng dipped his finger in the wine and wrote 5 words on the table, just forming a circle, and slowly said, it was Zhou Zi who first created the theory of the 5 elements. The 5 elements inhibit each other. The golden aquatic would makes fire and the native gold. The golden wood inhibits the water and the fire inhibit the gold. The golden carp of Gao Xian, the paperweight of Zhao Yu, the little loach you gave to Guqin, the fire dragon of Xiuxiu girl bracelet, the 4-legged snake next to your house. The knowledge here, get bigger, think about it, think about it. Xing Dafeng said, I think Luozhini is a bit weird. Qin Pingon returned to his senses, confused. What? Luozhini, there is absolutely no problem. Xing Dafeng laughed. Qin Pingan's mind was still in his hometown and the god's grave and asked, Are there more comings? Xing Dafeng said, It's almost like that, the mountain owner. You can count the index by yourself. Can you count with one hand? Isn't it enough? Nian Exen heard a general idea and said tentatively, Raise gu? Xing Dafeng spouted a sip of wine, wanted to stare at the Nianxin girl, but was reluctant, so he waved his hand and said, Don't talk nonsense. Xiao Emo said softly, It's a kind of invisible circulation, everyone has a chance to get everything. Xing Dafeng laughed and said, It's not so mysterious, it's a bit more vivid, that is, some people are sitting at the bank, everyone is at the gambling table, some people continue to lose their chips, leave the table and make money elsewhere, perhaps borrowing money. It may be that you have picked up money. In short, as long as you have money you can continue to return to the table, but in general this table is still less and less people, and the chips on the table naturally gather more and more. It is over when there is one person left. Until that moment the man sitting in the village left. That's the old man in the backyard of the Yang family drugstore, Xing Dafeng's master. Xing Dafeng picked up the wine bowl on the table and drank it. Qin Pingon hesitated to speak but stopped. Xing Dafeng glanced at the dry tobacco rod in Qin Pingan's hand and smiled. It's nothing, in fact I was a little aware of it before I left that year. What I couldn't say at that time was often they at the time for the rest of my life. Leaving Nianxin's house together and walking in the alleys, Xing Dafeng smiled and said, Go to the wine shop for a while? It's closed and the door is closed. Just open it again. Qin Pingon nodded. When he arrived at the wine shop he helped Xing Dafeng reopen the door. Qin Pingon found that there was a fresh object on the counter table, a green bamboo tube filled with bamboo carving wine-making chips. Qin Pingon randomly drew out a bamboo chip and wrote, Hey, what you say, you can do it at 4 o'clock. Everyone in this room persuades you 10. Qin Pingon asked with a smile, If you win this bamboo stick, everyone has to drink a bowl? Xing Dafeng nodded and said, In order to maintain the business of your shop, I have tried my best. But the drunks were very noisy at first. After half a month they all felt that drinking and boxing were more comfortable, but don't fly to the city. The restaurant in China is still very popular until now. There is no way out of the fragrance that blooms in the wall. The text on the wine order is varied. For example, there is, the old and the new 5 must equally divided and each drink 5 points, that is, the winner chooses 10 people at will. If the number of people is not enough, it means that the full seat will drink half a bowl. In addition, there are people serving as wine supervisors, similar to sitting in the village and drinking supervisors to prevent people who are fined for drinking from raising fish under their feet. Qin Pingon randomly drew out a bamboo chip again, his face turned black. Fear 2 bowls inside. Recognize drinking 1 bowl, not 3 bowls. Xing Dafeng craned his neck and glanced at him. You are so lucky there is no one. Xiaomo, why don't you fill up 3 bowls of wine for our mountain lord? Xiao Emo smiled and didn't move to get the wine. Xing Dafeng waved his hand. Since I don't drink, I should go back quickly, otherwise I have to sleep at the door again. Qin Pingon leaned against the counter and looked at the wall. Xing Dafeng threw the key on the table. I can't stand it anymore. You can close the door by yourself later. You don't have to come to open the door tomorrow morning. Louis has the key. Picking up a jug of wine from the wine shop, Xing Dafeng returned to his residence alone. Not far away, walking in an alley, walking slowly with good luck, he heard some movement again, stopped. Xing Dafeng coughed and said, Aren't you sleeping? Inside the dark room there were women laughing and cursing and men cursing. Xing Dafeng stood on tiptoe and leaned over the wall. He kindly persuaded you to fight and said, Forget about quarreling in the big evening, but you will fight again. Do you want Dafeng brothers to be peacemakers for you too? The room sounded of men getting out of bed, putting on shoes and copying guys. Xing Dafeng immediately rubbed the soles of his feet. At the wine shop, Xiao Emo smiled and said, Mr. Xing's style remains the same. Qin Pingon smiled and shook his head, left the key on the counter, closed the door of the shop and returned to Ningfu with Xiao Emo. After walking 6 steps in the martial arts field for about half an hour, Qin Pingon returned to the house, went to the side room to light the lamp, looked at the plain seals on the table with the same material and muttered, Isn't it? Those seals are all carved from leftovers of frosty jade. Qin Pingon actually wanted to ask Dongbu how she got that piece of frosty jade back then. In the early days of Hanging Mountain, in the narrow alleys of a dead-end road, there was an inn that could be said to be an unknown crane. It was the first time that Qin Pingon took the Osmanthus Island to the Suspension Mountain. He lived in the small inn. The shopkeeper was a young man, and there were a few shop assistants who were not too keen on business. It was very far behind that Qin Pingon learned that in this crane inn, from the shopkeeper to the shop assistant, none of them are fuel-efficient lamps. All of them come from the Sui Chu Gong in the Qingming world. He rushed to the Waowaishan demon, that is, the heart demon Daoist, natural of the palace Lord Wu Shuangjiang, the white-haired boy in the jail of the Great Wall of Sorqi. I just don't know if the frosty jade or some frosty jade that flows into the Great Wall of Jianqi, did the crane inn do anything? Qin Pingon hesitated for a moment, but still called Xiao Imo with his heartfelt voice. Xiao Imo grabbed the frosty jade material pieces one by one in the palm of his hand. After a while he shook his head and said, "There is nothing unusual." The implication is that Wu Shuangjiang did not separate a piece of mind and hide it. At least not among these prime chapters on the table. Qin Pingon remembered something. The husband said that he had been in the Great Xuandu Temple and met Wu Shuangjiang, who was among the 14th realms, as a guest Taoist temple. The Lord Wu at the time looked at the weather slightly unstable, a little bit. A fly in the ointment. Logically speaking, let alone what it is to be among the 14th realms, all Qi practitioners at the beginning of their respective breakthroughs need to stabilize their realm. But Wu Shuangjiang, can you use common sense to guess? Assuming that Wu Shuangjiang really did this, his mind must be somewhere in Wucai world, maybe in Feixingcheng or at the top of the mountain where Sui Chugong was built in Wucai world. This kind of behavior is more than just a risk-related act. It is the top taboo of cultivation when it comes to insufficiency and retreat. What's more, it is breaking the bottleneck of the Ascension realm and trying to enter the 14th realm. And this incarnation of the mind is no better than the great monk's Yang God body or the Yin God traveling far away. When leaving the real body, it is destined to be no higher than the realm. Once it falls into the hands of other monks, the consequences will be disastrous. He is not an outright lunatic and he can't do this kind of activity at all. But to Wu Shuangjiang it really seems to be nothing. Qin Pingon tentatively shouted, "Palace Master Wu?" Shouted again, but there was no response. Just call that Wu Shuangjiang by his name. Still nothing happened. Qin Pingon glanced at Xiao Imo expressionless. In a school in the Summer City, there is a teacher looking at a young teacher, walking under the moon with his hands folded, looking at a pair of handwritten couplets. The upper beam meets Ziweixing by chance, and the vertical column is lucky to be on the ecliptic day. This humble teacher is a native of the Great Wall of Jianqi. Because he is a practitioner but not a sword repairman, he has been working as a servant in the house of Sun Jiyuan, a sword repairman in the Yupu realm, and has lived in the school for the past few years. I just accepted a book boy last year. In fact, he was born as a pitiful and extremely natural plague god. He traveled here with a Fuyao cultivator, but the boy himself didn't know about it. In this way he would be unaware of it. As for the wandering monk, he was naturally a puppet who asked 3 questions. It's not that you can't follow that line and do some grand deductions, but the teacher doesn't want to reveal his identity for the time being, so he just chooses to cut it off. Anyway, he only needs to guess, which is more accurate than that fortune-telling. After hearing 2 sounds of Wu Gongzhu and Wu Shuangjiang, the teacher tutade, "Could it be a fool?" In the early morning of the next day, Qin Pingon went to the wine shop. Not long after the door was opened, there was no business early in the morning. Qiu Lang and Lu Yi, as well as Feng Kangel and Tao Ban, were all there, gathered around a table. Chat idle. The girl from the past, Lu Yi, who has been married as a woman, said in surprise, "Second shopkeeper." Qiu Yang also smiled, but he was more reserved than his wife. Qin Pingon smiled and said, "Looking back, when you opened a wine shop in the Summer City, I might not be able to come to congratulate me in person, but the plaques and couplets of the new wine shop are all wrapped in me." Lu Yi hurriedly gave the shopkeeper a blessing, and Qiu Long stood aside and smiled from ear to ear. Feng Kangel, the stubborn kid in the early years, is a big man. Tao Ban went to the stove and soon brought a bowl of noodles to the second shopkeeper. Feng Kangel complained, "Second shopkeeper, why did you come here?" Qin Pingon took the bowl of scallion noodles and a pair of chopsticks and laughed softly. "There is no way, there are many things, I can't help but do whatever he wants." Feng Kangel nodded and said, That's right, I'm thinking about making a lot of money. I haven't made a lot of money in so many years. One lying on the table, one holding his cheek with one hand, just staring at the second shopkeeper who had been reunited after a long time. They are not cultivators. From a child to a teenager and then from a teenager to a young person, they are all so fast. It seems like a matter of blinking an eye. If they want to become a middle-aged person, they won't be slow. Qin Pingon rolled a chopstick's noodles and smiled. See if I can be full? Taoban grinned. Feng Kangol asked, would you miss the wine shop after being away for so long? Qin Pingon nodded and said, yes. Xing Dafeng yawned and walked to the wine shop. The first guest at the wine shop today surprised Qin Pingon. He was a suave young man with the appearance of a poor scholar, still dressed in black. When this man saw Qin Pingon, he used a name that no one had ever heard of in Feixingcheng and said happily, brother good guy. Qin Pingon put down his chopsticks. Yo, it's brother Mu Mao. Brother good guy, I haven't seen him in a few years and my style is better than before. I don't need to drink when I meet in a foreign country and my heart is warm. It's easy to talk about it. Brother Mu Mao is not bad. To be honest, if brother Mu Mao doesn't come again, I will take the initiative to visit the house, and I should do my best as a landlord. To be honest, I used a pseudonym Chinwen before. In order to treat people with sincerity so that the good guy wouldn't be able to find me, I changed back to Mu Mao's real name. Coincidentally, I changed my name to Dou earlier, but now I have changed back to my real name. Presumably the good guy won't faint now, right? It's hard to say separate people. Xing Dafeng sat aside a little confused. Are you two brothers who have been separated for many years? Qin Pingon explained. In the ghost mythical valley of Luzhou Beiju I met this brother Mu Mao by chance, and I didn't know each other if I didn't fight. The scholar in black smiled and said, where, it's just as you see it before, and the gods are beautiful, giving me the opportunity to fight side by side with the good guys, to fight against the enemies, to make money together and the brothers to work together to cut money. He held his fist high at Xing Dafeng and shook it vigorously. Presumably this is the legendary treasurer who has no dross in his chest and is known as the prodigal son who is quite turbulent. Xing Dafeng clasped his fists in return. An imaginary name is an imaginary name. Qin Pingon smiled and said, if you come to Jianqi Great Wall earlier with Mu Mao's intellect, you will definitely be able to enter the Summer Palace. The scholar in black waved his hand and said, I dare not dare. Qin Pingon asked, are they here? The scholar in black smiled and said, no, it's just me. Qin Pingon suppressed the doubts in his heart, and did not break the casserole to ask the end. The guy in front of him, although his real name is Yang Ningxing, is just not all Yang Ningxing. Xu Nanyuan, the cave master of Tianyu Cave of Luxiazu, his only son Xu had heatstroke, came to Wuxia Tianxia that year, and soon chose a place of geomantic omen to create a transcendent platform. With this, Chen Wen, who took the initiative to come to the door, he quickly became one, and the latter became an assistant and helper. As for the guy with the pseudonym Yang Hengxing, his real name is Yang Ningxin from the Zhou Xian department of the Daoist dynasty in Luzhou, northern Zhu, and he is the elder brother of this Mu Mao brother. Of course he is dear. Yang Ningxin was in Wuxia world and soon from the Golden Core realm to the nascent infant realm, and at the same time from the Golden realm to the Far Journey realm. He is good at talisman, and he has no particular attention to walking the rivers and lakes without revealing yellow and white. A magic weapon, it is simply a mobile treasure house. As a result, it has attracted the coveting of all forces. Yang Ningxin has always shot hard and snowballed and finally attracted nearly 100 practitioners. The besieged, hunted and counter-killed. And Yang Ningxing, known as the Little Heavenly Monarch in Baijilazu, is more hopeful than his elder brother to inherit the Yunshao Palace, and then it will be natural to take advantage of the trend as the protector of the Great Source Dynasty. Yang Ningxing refined the mirror back of the 3 mountains and 9 Ho House of the Baojing Mountain in Ghost Mythical Valley. After arriving here there was almost no twists and turns and he successfully entered the Yupu realm. It's just that the two brothers seemed to have a bad relationship when they were young. They have not entered the colorful world together, and they have not seen each other in the past few years. Xu Heatstroke, a well-deserved son of heaven, has a prominent father and a rich family, and his mother is still the younger sister of the female fairy Zhou Xian. At the beginning there were 5 servant girls, sword servant, beside him, who followed him into a new world. They were named Xiaoping, Crimson, Sai, Daxian, Huaying, and they were all middle 5 sword repairers. Now they are 2 golden cores and 3 long men realm. This shows how Tianyu Dongshan's pair of mountain Taoists spoiled the only son, and the depth of Tianyu Dongshan's background can be seen. In fact, they are just taking care of the food, clothing, shelter and transportation of Shu Heatstroke. After all, Shu Heatstroke is one of 10 young candidates in the world. Qin Pingon asked, "The young man of Fu Yizhou?" The scholar in black shook his head and said, "I've seen it from afar, but there is no intersection." The basic techniques of Fuxi sect are somewhat similar to those of Judu Mountain. They are all composed of green words and green chapters. But in addition to asking gods to bring their truth down, Fuxi sect can also invite ghosts and immortals. At that time the Lord Ji Hai invited a god, Catch the Willow, and a ghost, Huabei. At that time both realms were in the Yuaning realm. As the guardian of the next sect lord, he followed the young man into the colorful world. The scholar in black asked, "Can you ask me something for the Shu brother over there from Tianyu Cave Tian?" Qin Pingon said, "There has been a civil turmoil, but the problem is not big. In fact, not only Luxiazi Tianyu Dong Tian Jinjiazi Chaopa sect, but also Baiwafudi, and even the ferry of Lu Kaishan on Iazhao has encountered a dangerous design on the mountain." The black-clothed scholar nodded and said, "This is the best. After listening to the Lord Shu, I can finally rest assured. With this news alone, we can ask our Lord Shu for 1 or 2 maidservants. The cultivator is most afraid of in case. But once that what if comes and passes, it is a great thing. After all, the possibility of just in case is almost negligible." The scholar in black sits cross-legged on the bench, always feeling a bit sloppy. Qin Pingon asked, "Why don't you return to Transcendental Station to enjoy the blessing? No matter how good the scenery is, after all, it is such a big place with few people and just a few faces. The key is that every tomorrow will be similar to today." The scholar in black curled his lips. "Unlike here, people come and go every day, the streets and lanes are bustling, full of vigor, and every tomorrow makes people look forward to the next tomorrow." Then he was suddenly strangled by a white-clothed young man. "Presumptuous! Did the left guardian of Qilong Lane borrow your courage? How dare you call my husband a brother?"